Hold on a second.
Yep.
Nelson. Hi, Nelson. Okay, well, we're ready to start the meeting, so why don't you just keep working at it and see if you can get on. We won't be there, we'll be there probably about half an hour or so. Okay, okay. Okay, let me pull up the agenda. Can you all see that?
Oh, there you go.
Here we go.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Can you scroll up a little bit? I have to read the meeting part.
Oh,
portion.
okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Good evening. Welcome everybody to the May 27th, 2020 Planning Board meeting. I'm Daniel Edmiston, the chairman. I'm going to do a quick roll call of members present. Please respond with an aye. Richard Clark.
Aye.
Steve Petroba.
Aye.
Bill
Aye.
Lou Perrin.
Aye.
And Russ Giglio, our associate member, is not on, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we have a full board quorum. Bill Scanlon is also on, our acting town planner. And we have Michelle's on board too, I think.
Yes, hi.
Hi. All right, so pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 18, and the governor's,
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all
Sorry,
right.
Dan. I got
I still have
sidetracked.
a hard copy, so I was hoping.
No, I got sidetracked, sorry. I'll pay
Yep.
attention.
And the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the Dudley Planning Board will conduct its public meetings and hearings via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. The board encourages all members of the public to view and participate in the meeting through a personal computer or smartphone. The town of Dudley has chosen to use Zoom software for this purpose. Please download the program to the device of your choosing. All right, so we are ready to go. We have a quorum. Do we have minutes that we want to go through, Bill?
Yes, I sent them out to you, Dan.
Oh, that's right, yep.
Do you want me to pull them up, or do you just want to act
Did
on
the
them?
rest of the board have a chance to read through those, or you want Bill to pull them up?
I've read through them.
I've read through them.
I'm good.
All right, so then, if everybody's had a chance to look through them, if I could get a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the meeting minutes from April 22nd, 2020 as presented.
All right, I have a motion to accept the minutes from the April 22nd meeting as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? We gotta go verbally.
Aye. Yep. that's
Steve?
a roll call.
Oh, aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
And Bill?
Aye.
And myself, aye, so we're unanimous. It is 7:06, so I think we can jump into our first item.
Dan, we have Nick Adamopoulos with us tonight, who is representing the marijuana operation at the Chase Mill, has a waiver request he'd like to make to the board.
All right, can you put the minutes back up so I can, the item?
You want the agenda or the minutes?
Oh, the agenda, excuse me, yes. All right, so it's 7:05. We've got a little bit after that right now. So 7:05, our pre-application meeting with DMA Holdings to discuss the application for marijuana uses at 3537 Chase Avenue and request for waiver that no special permit may be granted until the use has received the provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission. All right, so we have a gentleman who'd like to speak about this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nick Adamopoulos. I'm the attorney representing DMA Holdings.
Welcome.
Manual and people in to make sure that nobody.
All right, stop talking for a minute.
We can hear you, Nelson. You're on.
I'm on now. Bye. See ya. Like the order, Bill.
Uh,
All right.
so,
But I didn't do any difference. I don't know what I did, but go ahead.
we have submitted our applications for a retail manufacturing and cultivation at the 35 Chase Ave, the old Ethan Allen Mill. That was submitted around the end of March. At the beginning of this month, we did get our first RFI from the commission to clarify some information. And our answer to that RFI should be done by the end of the week. Based upon that time frame, a provisional license from the Cannabis Commission could come around the August-September time frame, which based upon that kind of time range, we're requesting that we start the special permitting process with the planning board in Dudley. Looking at the bylaw, it states that no special permit can be granted by the planning board until the provisional license has actually been issued by the Cannabis Commission.
Yep.
What we're asking is that we be allowed to open up an application with the planning board and provide all the necessary criteria under the bylaw so that the planning board can review our application. And at the same time, if that were to get done just before the provision is issued by the Cannabis Commission, that the board be able to conditionally approve the special permit, with the condition being that we get that provisional license from the Cannabis Commission. The reason we're asking for that is just so that both the application before the CCC and our application before the planning board kind of run concurrent, with the goal that ultimately we can get that permit and the provisional around the same time, so that ultimately once that happens, we could start the build out of the.
All right, thank you. Do any of the board members have questions?
Mr. Chairman, a question, if I may.
Shoot.
Does Mr. Adamopoulos know what the current status is of the Cannabis Control Commission in terms of their level of activity? Are they shut down like everything else, or are they meeting in some remote fashion?
So they're working remotely. The licensing individuals are going through the licenses. Like I said, we submitted our application once kind of this COVID issue had occurred. We get our RFI this month, so it does show that the process is moving along. The RFI had just some very little clarification, so it wasn't anything in depth that we kind of had to provide to them. So it shows that our application is probably about 98% complete prior to the RFI.
So you don't anticipate any additional delays on their part as a result of this pandemic?
No, from what I have spoken to members of the licensing board, and they did tell me that if our RFI responses are adequate, that there's a good chance that we could be on the August-September agenda looking for a provisional.
Thank you.
And they're doing those commission meetings are actually being done via Zoom. So no, the commission's the one who ultimately would grant the provisional.
Oh, we're all experts with Zoom.
Yeah, come to that, the new normal.
Any other questions? Steve's good. Bill's good. Lou, good. I just have one question real quick. Have you had any conversations with the Board of Selectmen?
So we had met with the selectmen initially. We had 2 meetings with them. We also held our community outreach meeting with the selectmen in attendance. And ultimately we went back before them to get our community host agreement signed. So that was the step for us to ultimately open up the application process with the CCC. At this point, our next step would be to get through the planning board for the special permit, because that's how the bylaws read and ultimately the CCC requires us to do.
And Bill, this location is in our overlay district, correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah, if there's no questions the board has, be more than happy to accept a motion to accept a waiver request, or to grant a waiver request that for the planning board to accept a special permit application prior to the decision by the Cannabis Commission, if I worded that correctly. Anybody? Going once?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little shaky in terms of the wording, but I think the
That's the
essence
only
of
reason I
it.
hesitated.
What was that?
That's the only reason I hesitated, Rich, 'cause I'm not quite sure how I wanted to say that.
All right, I'll take a shot at it. I would move that we waive the requirement as stated in the bylaws, which would have precluded our acting pending any action by the Cannabis Control Commission. And if the wording is clumsy, then my apologies.
All right, I have a motion, basically,
Second.
and I got a second from Bill. We'll go through the roll call. Steve,
Actually, can we amend that motion?
Certainly.
possibly.
Okay, because didn't we just talk about that we wanted to make it that the special permit, giving the special permit would be contingent on that they do approval of the Cannabis Control Commission?
Yeah, right now we're just waiving that requirement that we get the permission first. So if for some reason in the process, our approval would be coming before the Cannabis Commission decision, we would then, just my opinion, we would then make our approval conditional on that.
Oh, okay, we would do it at that time.
Yeah, so I don't think we're there right now. I just think right now we're just waiving that requirement.
Okay, I understand. Then I'm fine.
Okay. All right, so Steve voted yes. Rich?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
All right, myself also yes, so unanimous.
Thank you very much.
So Nick, when
No-brainer.
you,
Thank you for making it so easy.
Nick, when you get ready to submit, give me a call. We'll sit down and go over the bylaw requirements. Make
Yes,
sure your package is complete, and
that'd
then
be,
we can start the clock on the special permit.
thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful evening.
Thank you.
You too.
All right, what's next on the agenda, Bill?
Pull it up, Dan.
Lions
Yep.
Estates.
So it's 7:14, 7:15 is the next item on the agenda. Discussion of the covenant for Lions Estates. A possible vote to approve and authorize the town planner to sign. I'm gonna hold up and delay it up. Don't need to. 7:15, guys, we're good. So I see Mr. Haynes on. Hello, how you doing?
I'm present. How's everybody doing tonight?
All right.
You?
Fine, thank you.
Jason's also on, just joined us. Hear us okay?
Yes,
All right.
thanks.
So if I understand this correctly, Bill, you sent out the covenant to everyone. If anybody has any questions, we can ask those now, and if not, we just accept.
Yes, Dan, by way of explanation, I had drafted a covenant that I sent to town council, who had then marked up the covenant, and we sent it to David, and his attorney reviewed it, and he came back with no additional comments or changes. So I believe the covenant is good to go at this point in time, subject to the board's approval. If you have any other comments or suggestions, we can consider those now.
Have a chance to look at those. You guys have any questions? Do you want Bill to pull them up? What's your pleasure?
No questions.
I read through. I think it's pretty good.
No.
All right, all the engineering stuff is all set?
Yes. Based on the comments of the planning board and the decision that the board made, David and his engineer, John Grenier, went ahead and made the changes that the board asked for.
That's correct.
Great, perfect. So basically, we need to wait for the June 19th meeting, and are we gonna sign the documents prior to the meeting? Are we gonna do it on meeting day? I mean, well, we have to obviously come to a vote, right?
Dave, we're not at you yet. We're talking about Lions Estates.
Sorry, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. There's a different Dave.
Oh,
That's what I thought, Bill.
I So if the board has no questions, we could just accept the motion to accept the covenant.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we accept the covenant for Lyons Estates as presented and authorize the town planner to sign.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Steve. Thank you. All right, we will vote once again by roll. Steve,
Aye.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
All right, and Bill?
Yes.
And myself, yes as well. Unanimous?
So David, what I'll do then is I'll enter in the deed references that you sent me today,
Okay,
and then I'll email you the document. You can start signing on your end and have your bank sign as well, and then
Okay.
mail it back to us. And then I've been authorized by the board to sign it, which I will do. And then you can go ahead and record it. And then the only other step we would need after that is to endorse the Mylars.
correct.
And I think, as everybody knows, we have to wait for the clock to start on June 1st. And the 20-day appeal period will end on June 20th. And then
That
you
was
can
per that bylaw that you sent me, correct, Bill?
Yes, it was an order of the Supreme Judicial Court to start the clock for these appeals on July 1.
June 1.
June
I'm
1.
sorry, right, June 1,
Yep.
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, there's no conversation regarding that, but I do appreciate you sending me all that pertinent information. So I'll look for your documents. I'll get them printed out. I'll have them signed on my side. And then would you like me to scan them and send them to you, or would you like?
No, I'll need the original back.
Okay. So we can probably do the drop off like we did at the Dudley PD.
Yes,
Okay.
that'd be
Okay.
fine.
I appreciate the board's consideration and wishing everybody well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here.
All right, our agenda.
Coming up.
Again, we're right about on schedule, so 7:20, continuation of a public hearing, major site plan review, application submitted by JD&D Construction, 6,600 square foot building for a contract 24 Oxford Ave. So if the board remembers, we spoke about this some time ago. I want to say it was back in the spring, maybe even late last year. There was an issue with the Chestnut Street extension. So my understanding, Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that JD&D has purchased that or have an option to purchase that now?
It will come up at town meeting, Dan. There's a town meeting vote required
Okay.
to transfer the property over to JD&D. David Ochaki, who's with us tonight, started the process by preparing a draft deed. Again, it went to town council for review, who had, some changes to the deed. It went back to David's attorney, who has provided this document, which incorporates all of the comments of town council. So what we need tonight is a motion to recommend to town meeting that the planning board would approve the transfer of the property to JD&D. Town council provided a sample motion. Does anybody have that?
Yeah, I printed it out, so I'm ready to make that motion, but the motion is actually to discontinue that public way, just so.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, unless
So-
anyone has any questions, I would suggest that we can entertain a motion.
David, do you have any comments first before we
Make sure that all the engineering got checked off. As far as I know, Jalbert Engineering made a couple of revisions to the plans. From what I understand, everything is all set. Did a couple of revisions to the deed. We need to review that, approve it, whatever. Besides that, just want to confirm the meeting June 19th at 7:20 And is that being held via Zoom or like in person?
Michelle, do you know that? The town meeting?
June 20th, 19th?
At the town hall or on Zoom?
Is that the town meeting you mean?
The
you're
town
talking
meeting,
about?
correct, yes.
I'm sorry, it's going to be June 22nd.
Oh, June
It's up at Shepherd Hill,
Okay.
at the
22nd.
auditorium at Shepherd Hill.
At Shepherd Hill. Do we bring masks?
I think there'll be masks available, but maybe you should bring your own too.
Yeah, you never know. We'll see how it goes by ear. But so basically, that June 22nd meeting
June
is
22nd, yeah, it starts at 7.
the annual meeting, right?
Right.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, engineering all look good. You guys, the engineers are happy with Jalberts and all that.
Hey, Bill, I have a question.
Yeah. Okay, Nelson, go ahead.
Now that's town-owned property, right?
Yes.
That they're selling now. And this has been checked by town council that they don't have to like offer that to other people. Because in other towns I've been in, it seems like it gets offered to a group of people. And I don't know if that's legally, you have to do that and not do that. Did anybody look that up and is there an answer?
Well, it hasn't come up with town council, Nelson. I don't know the answer to the question. I'm assuming since we didn't hear anything from council about that it's okay to just transfer it directly. But I
Because
don't know.
I've been in other towns and I've never seen it work that way. And maybe it does, but that's not what I've experienced in the past.
So I can follow up with the town administrator about that and get an answer for you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Well, I would like to say, unfortunately, I'd hate to see it go that way. I mean, that was never brought up in the past, 2 years of review, but, we'll see what happens, I guess, but.
Well, I think what it is the neighbors have to be informed because they may be interested in it and someone else might be interested in it. You know what I mean? But I think legally they have to know about it. I don't know if they're
Where'd you see that, Nelson? Maybe I could try to look it up or reference it.
Well, I've been in other towns where they've done it. That's why I'm saying that.
Usually supposed to notify all the abutters.
Okay. Now, with that being said, do I have to send no more notifications out for the town meeting?
No. Now, the warrant will be published, I think, next week, right, Michelle? Or at least it will be finalized.
Right, on June 4th.
Okay.
Did you guys set a price on that, the town with him? Is that what you did?
No, the price is blank at the moment, Nelson.
Because what happens too is I've seen people getting bidding wars because say the person next door that owns the building, they may want it and they may be willing to pay a lot more. But that's what I've always seen.
Well,
usually,
there was something brought up with that because the neighbor owns half of it, so or something like that. Because it's an egress road between the two properties.
Yeah.
We've been working with him, so I mean, if you guys need some kind of documentation that says that he's able to release that or whatever, does not want anything to do with that, we can provide you with that.
Yeah, that would probably help. So you're buying half of it.
No, the whole thing.
So they're releasing their half. They're just giving it to you, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, not officially, but I've spoken with the neighbor. We have very good relations with him, and he said he has no problem. That's why we've been going in and out of, you know what I mean?
And now in the back, does anybody border that back side of that, or that's it? That's just that one neighbor surrounds that whole thing and you own the back side? There might be two people
The
involved.
railroad bed goes there. I don't know. That's maybe a question for the zoning board or whoever is that. But from what I understand is, I don't know.
So transferring that to JD&D will not affect any other property owner accessing their property.
Absolutely. Yep.
Everybody else has an access to their property through a different means.
Okay. I just figured it should be brought up.
All right, so Steve, I heard that you're lock and loaded with the wording from the attorney?
Yes, sir. I just want to make sure everybody was satisfied.
I just
Wait, we have a question. Yeah, Lou?
question. Are we still confirming that the water and sewer is on the property and not in the street? Is that changed or is it still the same? That question was for Dave.
Yeah. So as far as I know, we did locate up on top of the property. We're just trying to get through these hoops and ladders, but and then get the approval and then figure that out. It's going to be a whole nother project.
Yeah, Bill, we haven't approved this yet, right? We were
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. I think we were sort of waiting for this issue to resolve itself before the board could act on the site plan. We wanted to be sure that there was adequate access to the property through this Chestnut
Yep.
Street extension.
Yeah, so assuming everything goes good at the town meeting for the for JD&D, then it'll come back before us, and then we can cross all the Ts and dot the Is with everything else. Correct?
Yes.
All right, excellent.
I had one question, Dan, for Dave. Once you put up that building, is, like, I drive by there every day, looks like you guys kind of set up shop already. Is most of that stuff gonna be inside the building after, out of sight, out of mind, or?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we're gonna utilize, you know, the space. Yeah, it's gonna be all in the building. Yeah.
Okay. I can foresee maybe some abutters having concerns over.
Honestly, all the neighbors come over and thank us because that was just a old concrete jungle back there before. So now everybody's got a nice view of the Webster Town Hall, and you know, we're trying to make it look nice. I mean, we haven't had any complaints. You can ask the neighbors. I even went and I snowblowed the walkway. So, you know, if you want to notify the tenants and ask them if they have a problem with anything, you're more than welcome to. But like I said, everyone's just thanking us. So.
Okay.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, Steve, you want to go for it?
Excuse me, is this a public hearing?
No.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
We have to close the public hearing before a vote.
Well, no, we're not voting on the site plan. We're just voting on the
Continue.
transfer of the
Oh, I'm sorry.
property.
Go ahead.
It's not, that's not a public hearing part of it.
Just reading the agenda.
All right, we ready?
Ready.
For it.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the town discontinue as a public way the portion of Chestnut Street Extension shown as, quote, Chestnut SEXT, unquote, on a plan entitled, quote, Plan for Diamond Match Company of Webster Lumber and Supply Company, Dudley, Mass, unquote, dated April 16th, 1941, prepared by J.R. Kleindienst, recorded with the Worcester South District Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 118, Plan 10, which parcel runs from its intersection with the southerly line of Oxford Street to the parcel of land shown on said plan as, quote, Boston Albany Railroad leased to Webster Lumber and Supply Company, unquote.
All right, I have a complicated motion. Who second that?
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mr. LePage. Do a roll call once again to vote on this. Steve?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And myself also an aye. We have unanimous.
That's what happens when an attorney writes a motion.
Yeah. But if our attorney happens to be on, though, these things are much appreciated. Streamline the process and make sure that we're doing everything right. So it's appreciated. All right, move on to the next item. We're almost on schedule.
Amazing. 7:25 hearing.
We
Yep.
lose Nelson.
All right, so it's 7:31, but we're going to start we're going to continue the 7:05 p.m. Item, continuation of public hearing, major site plan review, application submitted by Peter Banister to provide a parking area for trucks delivery vehicles at 263 West Main Street. All right.
I think we lost Nelson on it.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you, but not see you.
Okay.
you probably stopped the camera.
No,
Nelson.
you don't need to see me anyways.
Did you stop the video, Nelson? Oh, now you just muted.
Oh,
Unmute, Nelson.
All right, so Bill, recommendations for how we're going to continue this today?
Well, Peter is not here. Jason Dubois is here representing Peter Banister. Jason worked on the site plan. We've been addressing multiple issues with this project for quite some time. Jason revised the site plan based upon various comments of the planning board, which went to Jeff Walsh for second peer review. Jeff sent the letter, I believe, yesterday, which I forwarded to the board. There were just a couple of minor issues that need to be resolved. Jeff seemed to be pretty satisfied with the engineering details of the project. So we're back sort of talking, substantive matters in terms of impacts on the neighborhood and how the board overall wants to handle this, whether you're prepared to just continue the discussion tonight or whether you'd like to set conditions and take a vote. That's obviously your call. But I know Nelson wanted to address the board. He had had some enforcement actions against Mr. Banister, and I think he'd like to explain to the board what the current status of the project is and what he's been doing in the past couple of weeks.
Welcome, Nelson. You got the floor.
Okay. Hey, what it is I know there's a lot of stuff been going around town, and it's been saying how we're unreasonable and this and that. And I just kind of want to clear it up, especially if other people are watching this video. I think the easiest way, I've got some letters here, and I'm just going to be brief. Originally, everything started on November 7th. What it is somebody made a complaint in late October. And then November 7th, Bill and I met with Mr. Banister, and we explained to him that, he needed a site plan review, and he just couldn't go doing what he was doing without any permits and everything. And he agreed to it. And then December 4th, I sent a letter out and basically, again, told him he needed to come to planning, to you guys. And then he never did anything. And then February 27th, I sent basically the same letter out, said to go to site plan review. Then finally, he did get on your agenda. And then after he got on your agenda, he wasn't really clear, and it had been continued a few times and everything, because I don't think anybody's holding them up. I don't think anybody's necessarily against it. But I wanted people to hear the other side of this story, and that's kind of the other side. And then May 4th, I sent out a letter because I had got some complaints, and they said, why are the cars still there? And as a matter of fact, he brought more cars back, and he did say at one of the meetings that he wasn't going to bring the cars back, and but he did. And I'm not going to speak for him, but that's what took place. So I think I'm reasonable. I think your board's reasonable, and if anybody's watching this video, I want them to hear this. And then there's one other point I want to make up. I think the big sticking point right now, I don't think, and I'm not speaking for anybody. I'm not saying they're against it or for it or anything, and I'm not saying I'm against it. But I am saying this. It was an accessory use for the area in the back, because you go back 500 feet, and in the front, he can do what he wants. In the back, it's an accessory use. An accessory use means, and I'm going to read this, accessory use, accessory structure or use, that comes right out of definitions of the zoning. It says an accessory use, or it says an accessory structure or use is one that is subordinate or incidental to the main use or the building on a lot. The term accessory use shall be used in connection, this is the important part, with a farm, and I realize that it's not a farm, shall include all structures customary use for farm purposes and should not be limited in size. But I'm saying, I think the big hang up right now is the number of cars, and Pete wants one certain number, and you guys have never gave him a number. I need a direction, and if you're going to be okay with the number of cars, that's fine, but I want to know so that when I go there, those are the number of cars, because I don't, I can't, I'm the zoning officer. The site plan and your decision has to be clear that, look, here's X number of cars, here's what you can have, and that's what I'm looking for tonight, if you do allow it. And like I say, I'm, that's you guys' decision on that. Basically, that's all I want to say tonight.
All right, thank you, Nelson. I noticed that Peter's on now. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Chairman,
Yep.
I'd like to go back to a few things because I don't feel like I don't think Mr. Banister's been honest with us from the beginning. So if you remember when he first came, before we made any hearings, he was going to comply with the order and he was going to remove vehicles from the property. From our very first meeting, he agreed to that. Since then, he's had vans on the properties, multiple vans, and now I'm looking at it. And then I believe the next meeting after that, he wasn't going to park vans there. It was just going to be cars. And now the order is for vans. So what are we doing here? He hasn't complied. He hasn't been fined. I think it's amazing how somebody can violate zoning and get away with it without being fined. I just think it's amazing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a copy of, I believe this is your letter of May 4th, Nelson. And the last sentence of the first paragraph, you asked for a number earlier, and in your letter, you referred to the only stipulation to this being allowed is the number of vehicles in the parking lot, in the parking, and this is in bold and capitalized, must not exceed 100 vehicles. Do we know what's there now?
There was roughly, I believe there was roughly 100 vehicles there. And all that letter said was that because Peter had promised at some meeting he was going to bring more cars in, and he counted them. So to bring no more cars in, he couldn't have more than 100. That's all that letter meant. It didn't refer to any amount later on or what your decision was.
All right,
I hope I'm clear on that.
All right, well, just for clarification, my sake, in any event, so the must not exceed 100. Has that been exceeded?
As far as I know,
100 on occasion.
It might have been barely over 100, but he's been keeping it fairly close. Fairly
close. And the complaints that have come to your attention, are they indicating numbers or are they just complaining in a general sense?
Just complaining in general. I think it all started when he first started and he started doing all his bulldozing and stuff. And that's when people kept asking me, does he have a permit? Is he came anywhere? Is he done anything? And that's what really started the whole process out.
Okay.
So then we did get him to go to plant to you guys, but that took a while too, but he did get there, so.
So Bill, if you could please correct me if I'm speaking, it's something that, just please correct me if this isn't true. We've had different meetings about this site and this application. We've talked about the drainage, we've talked about the lighting, we've heard from a couple neighbors and the residents, I believe. We really haven't tackled the whole issue of zoning yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so even though it sounds like we're taking a step backward, I think it's to kind of bring this to some kind of a conclusion, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I just kind of wanted, for the board's sake, just kind of go over a couple of items zoning related. The first one is Nelson, as a zoning officer, made the recommendations wrong. We made the decision that the leasing of motor vehicles is allowed in the B15. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nelson. And it's since the zoning bylaws don't have every single use listed, he felt that the leasing of vehicles was covered under the motor vehicles rental, sales, and service. Is that correct, Nelson?
Well, what it is the zoning bylaw says accessory use is an allowed use, but they don't really define clearly accessory use. So for cars, for motor vehicles being parked. So it is an allowed use, motor vehicles being parked. But when they say accessory, it doesn't say a number or anything. So I think that's up to decisions or grabs as far as what you guys think. I wish there was a definition for accessory, but it does allow parked vehicles as an accessory use in that back district.
All right, so Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. We're looking for a primary use in the business 15 district. that is listed as a permitted accessory use in the R30, correct?
Yes, I think the Business 15 district allows quite a variety of commercial activities. And I think Nelson and I talking about it agree that a leasing company would be permitted in the Business 15 district.
Yep.
And then the issue before the board is whether a 486 space parking lot, which is accessory to a leasing company, it would be allowed in the residential district.
Correct. So in the permitted uses for B15, for business 15, motor vehicles, rental, sales, and service. So
Yes.
we need to be in agreement that this is the, or get a statement from the owner that this is going to be the primary use. Am I correct in that?
Peter?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, same thing. I did notice in the notes I read quickly from the town engineer, it still stated like delivery vehicles and stuff like that. It's really not, even though it's kind of only been like delivery vehicles, the typical typically I don't think we'd see really any delivery vehicles. It would just be like you know, SUVs and compact cars and stuff like that.
All right, Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, I actually wanted to go back one step further, and I just wanted to get clarification. And Nelson, you might be able to help me with this. Before we can approve the accessory use, doesn't the business in the business zone area already have to be in existence and running, operating that particular type of business already?
Well, he's saying the backside is an accessory use, and I think he made this statement. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter. You made the statement that you were using that shed out back, or I don't want to use the word shed. That building out back is an office. It was an accessory to the office.
Yeah, that's that section. The office area goes with this section. You know, it's I'm taxed on it. I pay income tax on it. You know, you can check the town records.
I'm not questioning that, Peter. I did look at the zoning map. I do see that the old driving range building back there, that is in the business section, even though it's on the rear parcel. It's actually on the corner that is still on the business side of the zoning line. But my problem is that there's no office in there. I mean, there's nothing to indicate that there's no signage to indicate that there's a leasing company operating out of that business, out of that building. There's no activity there. There's nothing going on. It appears to be just storage right now.
Yeah, I didn't you know, force them to put a sign up or anything, and I wouldn't. You know, today.
Missing some of the audio here.
Hey, Pete, we can't hear you. Your phone
Can
is
you hear me?
breaking up.
Let me pull closer to the internet. Okay, hold on. See if this is better. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I was saying, I wouldn't force them, and I didn't force them to like put a sign up. You know, it's kind of on them if they wanted to, I guess, publicize, you know, that particular section. It's, you know what I mean? My long-term goal is to get them in the front, you know, to get them that office. They do actually have another office already, you know, multiple offices.
I mean, I'm referring back to the March 11th meeting, and at that point you had said that Enterprise was out of there at the end of August. So the
Yes.
intention was that the leasing company would move into there. Mr. Clark, I remember he actually, I had to make notes, but he actually inquired about how many employees would be in this type of business, and you stated that there would be like 5 employees. And I mean, I've been by there a couple of times. I've driven in there a few times. There's never anybody around. There's nobody operating in that building.
Right. I don't
Nothing
think they,
going on.
even though they rent it, I don't think they really use it, to be honest with you.
Well, I
Because
think
all
that's
this-
where I have a problem with trying to say that, you know, you want to make it, you want us to grant you permission of accessory use, and it's contingent on that it's tied to an existing business, but essentially, I mean, if I had to, I mean, it's not like I could put a porta potty on a corner of my business property and stick a laptop in there and say, you know, this is Steve's leasing company here, and then have the zoning line, this residential property right next door, and say, hey guys, I want accessory use and I want to quadruple the number of parking spaces. That's I think where I have a real hang up with that. And if you had come to us, I remember I had asked you how many cars you could park on the section that was zone business, and I believe you had said approximately 50 cars. Now, if you had put a leasing company in there and say Enterprise's front area there, and you had them operating out of there and just using the business area and, you know, having about 100 cars there, and then came to us and said, hey, we want to expand. I would like to use this rear residential lot as an accessory use to this current operating, this current operation that's going on.
You know, in a perfect world, that would be great, but you can't, you're not appetizing to someone if you have 100 spaces for someone who needs 500, and it's not like, hey, let's come in the front, let's get you in here, and then I'm going to go for more parking spaces. It kind of works like it works now. It kind of works in reverse. Here, let's rent this space, and then if we get the parking, then I'll try and get them to come in. If this doesn't work,
but the reality is it does in fact work, because you're actually doing that right now. You're in violation, but you are actually operating or allowing them to operate with less than as many vehicles as you want.
I don't really think, if you really look at it, that it's a violation if it is a rental. You know, just because they don't use it doesn't mean that if someone sat in that office all day, it would make a difference to you. You know what I mean? It's like they have everything all set up in one office already. You know, there's no point.
Can I just say something through the chair?
Right, go for it.
I was just looking through the zoning, you know, the use table as well. And I mean, both uses under the business, as far as the, you know, the autos and all that, and also the accessory as far as the you know, light commercial vehicle parking as the accessory use, they're both listed under the P, which is site plan approval. So wouldn't they both be, you know, applied for through site plan approval at the same time and be, you know, voted yes or no on the same permit? I mean, you wouldn't have, you know, I guess you could also have a small business and have it grow, but I mean, it appears that they both fall into the P category, which is site plan approval.
Okay, Mr. Dubois, if that's the case though, wouldn't you agree that it would be wrong to actually start the business and actually have the business operating before you even started the site plan review process?
No, I do agree, but I don't think that the vans that are parked there now is the ultimate goal of this site. That was just, you know, like Peter has said multiple times, that was a temporary thing through Amazon, and that the ultimate outcome of this property is not to have Amazon parking. It's for a different, you know, speculation or a lease company that's got nothing to do with Amazon.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, mention has been made of they and them. And who are those pronouns? I mean, who are these people? What's the names that are involved here? We've been told it's not Amazon, but we haven't been told who it is. It's still a question in my mind.
I'll let Peter answer, but I believe this is basically a speculation, like a lot of, you know, site plans that we apply for are under speculation.
Okay, so there is no definite they at this point. It's just an unknown.
Well, I do have a company. Hopefully, they're giving me 1 year to get all the permitting, which would give me till this October to line everything up. So if there's a possibility that I can make this work if I can get the permitting.
Not Amazon.
How long before
It's definitely not Amazon.
So how long before the remainder of those Amazon trucks are off the property?
You know, that's totally on them. I think they were actually waiting for, these vans are supposed to go, but they can't get the plates through the state of Massachusetts. Like everything is screwed up. You know, they got like 150 plates at once, they told me, and all of a sudden, you know, 30 or 40 vans disappeared. You know, and I think because Amazon grew so fast, that's the only reason why there was even a second wave of vans.
My concern is we talked about this before, and I know we talked about that you would move the trucks out of there, or and then the numbers would reduce, and then all of a sudden more came in, and the total number of Amazon vans went back up.
Well, honestly,
so that's why when you're telling me this, I'm having a real problem believing it. Sorry.
But if you go back and watch the last meeting, I think you can see how someone could get confused when everybody was in favor. You know, that's when I said, okay, well, otherwise I could have stuffed every van that came in afterward within the 500 feet, you know, for no reason at all except to satisfy the planning board. You know, I could have done it.
No, you should have done it to comply.
Well, I thought everybody was good when everybody gave
But no. The special permit hadn't been granted at that point.
I think if you go back and watch the meeting, everybody was like, yeah, okay, yep, okay, good, and everybody, and I'm like, okay, good, finally.
Yeah,
we meant good, move forward with the process, not jump ahead to the end game.
That's correct. I agree with Steve. The very first meeting before the COVID-19 was at the town hall, as you said you were going to be compliant.
And I was.
Meetings, we said we would, yeah, everybody's in agreement. We're going to work with you and move forward. And then all the vehicles showed back up.
Yeah, Lou, when you pulled through here, there wasn't one van in the back, and I got you right on my phone.
That's correct. And I was,
you saw I was compliant with the board. Yes. When the board asked me, and Nelson came up and he said, Pete, you got to move the vehicles. What did I do? It was exactly what I was told. Don't tell me I haven't been honest and truthful, and I'm trying to work some sort of crazy deal when you knew the vans were moved and you didn't tell anybody when I wasn't at the last meeting, and you let the whole board think that I was some guy who wasn't going to listen and comply. And the whole time I did exactly what I was asked. And then when I got the thumbs up, I thought it was good to put the vans back. I'm not, you know, don't tell me like you didn't know. You pulled through here. There wasn't one single van in the back.
Mr. Chairman, a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Peter, do you have control over what goes into that lot, or they just deliver things when they have the need to deliver things?
You know, I can ask them to do anything. And if they, you know, if I told them they had to move the vans up, they would move them up. But there's no point to moving the vans up. The only people that have a problem with this 500-foot marker is the planning board.
No, seriously, do you know when things are coming and how many? And when they're going and how many? Or do they just show up? It sounds to me like they just show up.
Yeah, there's no point in me asking, hey, when are the vans going to go? Hey, can you park them here? That would be a lot of legwork on my end. I could do it, but for no reason. I mean,
all right. So for all intents and purposes, control in terms of the number and the frequency has been given to this third party, and it's not something that you have any input or even control over. Is that correct?
Well, when I asked them to move the vans, they moved the vans. When I came up and I said, listen, because Nelson said, Pete, I think you misunderstood. You're not supposed to put any vans in the back. I said to the guys, I said, listen, I can stuff them all in the front. You know, I told you that. And they said, you know, if you need us to, whatever. I said, listen, just don't bring any more vans in. No problem. And I've done exactly what they've asked me to.
All right, guys, I think we're getting a little bit off track. I appreciate all the input from everybody, but if I could just kind of try to reel us in just a little bit and get back to the zoning thing. Just to respond a little bit to some of the stuff that's been going on, though, I didn't go back and look at all the meeting minutes or all the videos of our meetings, but my understanding at the last meeting, or one of the last meetings, is that we signified our, I don't want to say approval, but our understanding this is going in the right direction regarding the engineering, regarding the site lighting, regarding the information from the abutters. When I came up with the number of vehicles that we didn't get into approval, and we didn't talk about zoning. The zoning thing has been going back and forth, and to me, this is the whole crux of the matter. I mean, if if it's allowed by zoning, we move forward. If it's not allowed by zoning, even though the engineering looks great, we're kind of at an impasse here. So to get back to what Jason said at the beginning of, before we got off on this back and forth stuff, there is a permitted use, and it's a business 15 for the motor vehicles. It states literally word for word, motor vehicles, rental, sales, and service. So my understanding, Nelson, you basically said the leasing of motor vehicles falls under this category, correct?
Correct.
All right, so to Jason's point, we have a permitted use, we have a, for lack of a better term right now, a potential occupant who could be in that site with this use. To me, the issue comes in when we are in the, or get away from the business 13, and now we're in the residential 30. When you go through the permitted uses in an R30, there is nothing in there about motor vehicles, other than 1 vehicle or 2 vehicles per household or something. But there is permitted accessory use for R30, light commercial vehicles. Again, that's word for word, light commercial vehicles. Doesn't define what a commercial vehicle is, doesn't say how many, doesn't say if they're for leasing purposes, if that's a contractor who's working for an electrical firm, there's no other information. And to me, this is what we have to just figure out to make sure that, yes, we're all in agreement that the uses, the zoning is correct for this. And then I think we can get into the details of the number of vehicles, offices, if we're gonna have rental, if we're gonna have delivery vans driving back and forth every day, or simply a leased yard. And then to something that Peter brought up, the vehicles out there do not have tags on them. So my understanding, that means they're not registered. And we have a portion of the bylaws, Article 21, that talks about the storage of unregistered motor vehicles. And there's a limit to those. So I think we need to get the big picture items out and taken care of, and then let's get down into the nitty gritty. If you guys are okay with that.
I got it. All right. So I have a question regarding what you just said, Dan.
Yep.
Peter, you had stated at the previous meeting that you attended, when Dan opened the meeting and he referred to it as trucks and delivery vehicles, you actually made a comment that you felt that was incorrect.
Correct.
Leading us to believe that the intent was that these vehicles would not be commercial vehicles or trucks, that they would be passenger vehicles.
You can, most companies, I think, will register passenger or SUVs commercially.
Okay, so my question is, Nelson, based on what he just said there, would you consider, if I had a car that I used in my business, and a passenger car, and I registered it under my business name, would you consider that to be the light commercial vehicle that is described in the zoning regs? Because I'm thinking maybe passenger vehicles, period, wouldn't qualify under that definition that Dan just read.
I tell you, Steve, here's what I want to do. I want to look up definitions in a second here, and I'm hoping there's something that says light commercial vehicles, but probably it doesn't.
I'm looking right now, Nelson.
But if it doesn't, off the top of my head, light commercial vehicles, I would think of them as maybe pickups. I hate to say it, vans. You know, lighter vans. I would consider that light commercial vehicles. If there's no other definition, that's what I would decide.
There's not a definition in the Dudley zoning bylaws. I've looked.
Yeah, I don't think there is either. I think I've looked before. Because we had a hang up, you know, with that. Bill and I both. Bill, we discussed this for quite a while, didn't we? And we wish there was different definitions in the bylaw. We wish things were written differently, but they're not. But it is a permitted use in that Res 30, but as an accessory. The key right now is what is accessory. I think you guys have to decide that, because I can't decide what isn't defined. You can be right or you could be wrong, and somebody can appeal your decision. But if you think accessory is a certain number, that's up to you guys to decide. And that's what I hope you will decide maybe tonight. And Dan, I think you hit it right off the nail, what you just said earlier. You know, that's what we need to get to.
Right.
Know?
And then just to kind of get sidetracked a little bit as far as, the use, the company who's being brought in here. Is it Amazon? Is it somebody else? Peter, I might be reading between the lines, but if you can just kind of confirm or deny what I'm about to say. Yes, you have a leasing company right now who has Amazon vans on site. They are going to be there for a certain time that maybe you can and cannot tell us. And afterwards, once we approve or make a decision on this, at that time, you're going to market the site to some leasing company who's yet unknown. You've got someone on the hook, but you don't really know who it's going to be.
Well, yeah, I do have someone, but it's not a definite. And that's why I don't want to say. I mean, I could tell you who the company is, but if this company doesn't go for it, I'm going to try and get a different company. So to tell you the company name or whatever, I just don't. I don't get the point in that. And if I don't get the parking, I'm not gonna get anybody for it.
So I would say to the board then, once we get past this zoning issue, again, to get to where Nelson's saying, we start talking about light commercial vehicles, what does that mean? We can decide, does that mean vehicles? Does it mean delivery vehicles? Does it mean vehicles that are being brought there, stored momentarily, or for a certain time frame for leasing purposes? I think we can kind of get into that definition, correct, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dan.
First question to everybody is, sorry, Bill?
Sorry to cut you off. So I just randomly looked up the definition of a light commercial vehicle. And in this definition, it says pickup trucks, vans, and three-wheelers, all commercially based goods or passenger carrier vehicles. So, it does list pickup trucks, vans,
Can I say this, Bill?
commercial good delivery vehicles or passenger vehicles up to 15 passengers.
Dan?
Yes.
I want to clarify something Bill said. We got to be careful because it depends when you look up that definition, how you look it up or what you're deciding. Because if you have a CDL, commercial driver's license, anything under 26,000 pounds is considered light commercial. 26,000 pounds is a pretty good sized dump truck. So if you don't clarify that tonight, and Peter has somebody to come in and they want a dump truck and it's under 26,000, I'm going to have to allow him to put it in there. And I don't think that's what you want. So,
I mean, I'll be the first one to say, listen, if it's a dump truck issue that makes the deal, listen, write it up that I can't have dump trucks over 15,000 pounds. I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? To me, we shouldn't even be talking about it. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Well, we should be talking about it because if we
Yeah,
don't,
put it in there. Put it in there that it won't be in there. If that's a deal breaker, absolutely no 26,000 pound dump trucks.
Dan, the other thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe a pickup, a 3/4 ton pickup, I'm going to say it's probably around 11, 12,000 pounds. So to give you an idea, those vans, I don't know what those vans weigh, but they got to be right up there. They're pretty heavy duty vans. They're 350s. So probably Peter's right. Peter might know more about that than me. But that 15,000 might be pretty close, But
I don't think they're that much. But they got to be over 10,000 pounds.
Yeah. So
it's
maybe
nowhere near 20. It's nowhere near 26,000 pounds.
But I definitely, the clearer this is tonight, Dan, the better off I'm going to be as far as enforcing whatever he does down the road, because he doesn't seem to know exactly what's going to go there, and that could affect us in the future. You know what I mean?
Basically, look at what everybody drives as a normal vehicle, and that's what they lease out because that's what people drive. But they would lease it commercially. They'd lease, like they said, if a company gets 25 vehicles and they only take on 15 salespeople, they could have 10 cars just sit here for a year and then go off to auction.
So I think the first thing that I would like to hear, and I think we've covered this a couple of times, so excuse the repetition, but just, Peter, the nature of the business that you're marketing is a leasing company.
Correct.
Okay, so with that, board members and Nelson, is everybody in agreement that the leasing of vehicles is permitted in a B15 district under the motor vehicles, rental, sales, and service? Does anybody have an issue with that?
No.
All right. So in the business 15, we have the leasing of vehicles. What does it say? Leasing of vehicles. So that's squared away. Now we got to get to the accessory use. So permitted accessory use in a residential 30, light commercial vehicles. Which would mean then, just to make it this first straight. So this is how I'm reading this. Board, please let me know what your thoughts are. If there is a occupant in the business 15 district who is in the business of leasing motor vehicles, then that would allow the parking of light commercial vehicles, let's just say the parking of leased vehicles in the residential 30 district. Nelson, does that sound fair?
Yeah. Yep.
Anybody else? Shall I repeat it, or you guys have questions?
Let me say this, any board member of the plan can disagree with me. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, that
Right.
doesn't, everybody has an opinion, and opinions can be different than mine, for sure.
Right.
Especially when something's vague like that. So, I mean, you want to speak up by all means.
Can you repeat that, Dan? Sorry.
I was just
Yeah,
gonna
no problem.
say,
So what my take on this is, if an occupant in the business 15 area of the site, so someone who's renting a space or leasing a space, if their method or order of business is the leasing of vehicles, then in the residential 30 district, in the back of the site, then the parking of these leased vehicles would be permitted as an accessory use.
so an occupant, in other words, an existing business, would that be the same? Same
Yes.
way of saying existing business.
And can I say, Dan, can I speak
Yep.
for a second? If you look up the definition of accessory structures of use, it says incidental to the main use in the back is residential 30. And it says it's a permitted use, accessory use to the main use, which is residential, and it's got the P there. And that's why I have to say, and it's allowed use. The big question is, what was the intent, and what was the intent of the number of vehicles, I guess? I
And
mean,
that's
I
to me
wish
the
that was
next step.
rewritten and a lot clearer,
Yep.
but I have no choice but to allow it from what I'm reading it now. I think the bigger question is the number of vehicles there. You know what I mean?
Right, but if the board agrees that with that person, with that occupant in the business 15 district, whose business is the leasing of vehicles, if
Yeah.
they're there, and if we agree that the parking of these leased vehicles in the residential 30 area is allowed, next step would be, all right, any restrictions to how many vehicles, the size of the vehicles, et cetera. But we got to get the zoning squared away first.
Yeah, and I did pull up the definition that Nelson was referring to.
Yep.
Under accessory structure or use is one which is subordinate or incidental to the main use. So I think, the question would be whether the parking lot that is being proposed is incidental and subordinate to the leasing company that would go on to the business 15 portion of the property.
Correct.
I've just got a basic zoning question.
Yep.
If you have a parcel of property that is bisected by the zoning line, the zoning border, so to speak, is there a rule that stipulates that one side or the other actually takes precedent over one based on size? Like if 10% of it's in business and 90% of it is in residential, does that come into play?
There is something in our zoning about that. I'd have to find it because I've dealt with it over near the industrial transfer because Marty was going to build a house there, and that was divided. And in industrial, a house wasn't allowed, but the way it's worded, he was allowed to do it because I think it's like 30 feet over the boundary or something it was. But don't quote me on everything I'm saying right now. I got to find it, but it's definitely in there. It's definitely in there. But would it affect this situation? I'm not sure. And if it did, it would be only like 30 feet maybe. So then we'd be right back to where we were with a big question of how many cars, I believe. But let me see if I can find it, okay? I get the book in front of me now. I'm looking.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, after you read that, it says existing business.
It says what?
My question is there an existing business that's using it now as an accessory, or we voted on something as a future business?
Future. So right now, there's not a leasing company in there. If I'm sorry for, Peter, please correct me if I'm incorrect, but the statement is made that Enterprise might be leaving by August roughly, and that assuming that Mr. Banister can get the back end squared away and market it as however many parking spaces, he would bring somebody else in there as a leasing company to replace them with using the back area. Correct, Peter?
Yeah, my goal, no matter what, I asked Enterprise to move out. So in August, they're supposed to move out. And what I'd like to do is get the company that leases this office in the back to the front. I want them to move everything they have locally here. But in order for me to really, to get them here, to make it, where it'll work for them, I have to have enough parking. I guess that's basically the end of the story.
Yeah, and I think what's happening is that the planning board would approve or would act on the site plan, which would allow Peter to then go ahead and find a leasing company to be the principal use of property in the Business 15 district. Until he gets a leasing company, he wouldn't be able to use the parking lot if he constructed it. So it would sit vacant until he got a leasing company to occupy the main, the portion in the Business 15 district. And I think you could condition the decision that only the parking lot can only be used for a leasing company accessory use parking.
Bill, are you saying we would stipulate that it only be used for a leasing company?
Well, I think, yes, I am saying that, and that if they wanted, Peter wanted to have a different use that would require that parking and come to the planning board for approval to change the use.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we had that discussion a couple meetings ago. That's what I said. If I was going to start flipping hot dogs or something, that I'd have to come back to the planning board.
So effectively, you would have no other option other than a leasing company.
Correct.
Peter, what's the story on that approximately 12 to 15 cars that are up in the far back corner of the lot? They don't have any tags on them. They look almost like, I don't know if they're parts vehicles or what the story is on those.
Those are cars I've purchased throughout the years that I'm either going to fix up or sell or, restore. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done anything with those cars, and I don't know. Most of them, they've been there for 10 years. I mean, if it's a deal breaker, I can move the cars.
So
you know what I mean? If any one of these little things is a hang up, just tell me. I'm an easy guy. I just want to get this through.
You're looking for 496 spaces?
488, I think now.
486, I think.
I got to hang up on the total number of spaces just to put it out there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, without it, don't send the plans to the town, to the town engineer. Don't waste our time, because without it, it's a complete waste. All of this has been a waste. But yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. We either get enough cars, enough parking spaces, or I'm not appetizing. That's just end of story.
I had a question for Jason. Wouldn't your site plan propose the number of vehicles that would fit back there?
You mean what do we have on the site plan right now shown?
Yeah, I mean, based on area, based on how big a vehicle is, you should be able to predict how many vehicles will fit there.
Yeah, there's 488 spaces right now, but I mean, it could be, we're not even using half the site. I mean, the site's very large.
Mr. Chairman?
He stepped away for a minute.
Mr. Dubois, do you know I think it came up in one of the previous meetings. Peter had mentioned something about the reason why 500 was the number that came up. And I think I made a comment about, so it could be 499, and he said it could be. But I thought he mentioned something about that you may know something about that 500 triggers something.
Yeah. So originally I thought I had to check, but it's actually 1,000. If you have over 1,000 parking spaces or 1,000 vehicle parking lot, it triggers a MEPA review, a MEPA study. So it's 1,000 though, it's not 500.
Jason, there is a wetland here on the eastern portion of the site. Right. That's the wetland boundary, and have a 100-foot buffer zone. Thanks. Part of the bioretention area is within the buffer zone. I don't think you've been to Conservation Commission yet for determination or an order of conditions. So do you intend to comply with that?
Yeah, yes.
There's also another wetland boundary down here where you don't show a buffer zone. Does this have a buffer zone?
That didn't really appear to be in the field like when we were out there, but that was just shown on like an old recorded plan from like a long time ago. But I don't know if that was maybe altered back when they did the subdivision that was back there. I'm not really sure.
That would probably affect, I mean, if that's an actual wetland, then that could affect the ability to put in parking in the buffer zone, subject to the Conservation Commission approval.
Yeah, I mean, even if that was a wetland right there, I mean, you could park, technically, you can work right up to the edge of a wetland. So, I mean, it wouldn't really affect, the design.
There's a 25-foot no-build zone from the wetland boundary in Dudley.
Okay. And again, that's all, that whole property over there in that section is all field currently. It's already all, previously altered. So I don't know if it would be an exemption or what.
Hey, could I say this too, getting back to Steve? I think it was Steve's question about, or maybe it wasn't, about the boundaries and how it affects it if you got two different bounds. I did find that section. It's in a zoning section 2.01.02. The middle paragraph, here's what it says, and I'm going to explain it to you what it says, or what I think it means it says, because it's confusing. It says, when a lot is transected by a zoning district boundary, the regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district of such lot may also be the option of the owner to be deemed to be governed in a smaller part beyond such zoning district boundary, but only to an extent not more than 30 linear feet in depth beyond such zoning district. Because the front's smaller and the back's bigger, he can extend it 30 feet. That's what that's saying, in my opinion. If it was the other way around, he would be all set, but it's not. But that is what it, but anybody wants to look it up, 2.01.02, it's on page 5, the zoning.
Yeah, that's what I remembered reading, and I didn't understand it, but
no, it's hard to understand. I've had some meetings on this, and I've dealt with it with other residential, and that's what we came up with, and it took a while to come up with it. You were not going to read it the first time, and necessarily, maybe you'd understand it, but it's a pain. But that's how I'm reading it anyway. So it would be 30 feet more. He could go up beyond. I mean, I guess that would help him some,
So Nelson, are you telling me if I split the area in the back and make this section right off of this, say, 4-acre lot smaller than 4 acres?
What's your area in the front?
It's like, I think it's a little bit over 4 acres.
Let me think now. One of large
This may make our life easier.
Think about it. I'll hang up right now. You guys will never see me again. I'll be at an attorney's office in the morning at 8 o'clock.
Here's the section that Nelson is trying to parse out.
Bill, read that for me right now.
Yeah, somebody
Tell
read
me your
that, make sure
take on it.
everybody knows what it says.
So the
Because
regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district of such lot. The regulations of the bylaw applicable to the larger part by minimum area for the zoning district. That is not clear at all.
Well, let's get clear on it, because I'll go tomorrow and I'll make this happen. This will be quick and simple for everybody.
Yeah, how I'm reading that is that if you have let's just use this as an example, 5 acres of a business 15 in the front, and you've got 4.8 acres of residential in the back, that the zoning regulations for the business 15 apply to the residential, but only for the first 30 feet over the zoning district.
Yeah, even if that's probably true, Dan. So 30 feet, doesn't really help Peter out that much.
No.
Right, okay.
It's not the whole, wouldn't be the whole site, it's just over that line is how I'm understanding it.
Right, it's 30 feet over
Right.
the line into the residential portion.
And the other thing that we're forgetting here is that there's a lot line there. This is 2 parcels. In that thing you just shared, Bill, it doesn't show it, but that's actually 2 parcels.
In the back.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
the driving range was on a separate parcel.
So if you look at the rear parcel, it actually shows that the driving range shed is on a small part of the rear parcel that's in the zoning for business, and that the majority of that is of that rear parcel is zoned residential. So
Right.
if you read, go back to what we just read, it's actually saying the larger of the 2 parcels is what takes precedent. That rear lot, the larger part is actually residential. So I would interpret that to mean, he can actually say, if you wanted to, that where the shed is right now, he could have that considered to be residential.
Right. That's how I interpret that too. Up
I
to
guess he could.
30 feet.
Yeah. That 30 feet, I think, might be able to go either way, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're all saying the same thing. We're only worrying about 30 feet.
Yeah,
Steve,
but I
is
mean,
this-
as far as it going either way, Nelson, I think that because it says that the larger part is
Right,
what,
minimum area for the zoning.
Is-
Yeah. So the larger part, whatever is required, you have to at least have that much area, but he's got more than that, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
but I don't think it's gonna solve his problem.
No,
No.
I agree.
No, you guys can solve my problem. That's it.
Right.
Did anybody look at rezoning this back area because it abuts that commercial? Did we
Well,
already,
Bill and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, didn't we suggest to him to put it on a warrant and go to a town meeting? Because we thought that was the best solution to begin with, and Bill came up.
Oh,
with
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Jesus,
But we didn't, but I wish,
then all the
Yeah.
headaches are over.
Oh, absolutely. No, we mentioned that, but it was after we started this process. So we're kind of,
well, actually it was before, but that's okay.
well,
It was like right when you first came in, because before that, you had already started, Peter.
all
And,
right.
Day
well,
late and a dollar short. So
Here you go,
just-
but,
I don't want to
There's
mix
a
this
lot
up.
of cart
It's
before the
vinegar.
horse going on here.
It seems like it, but in order to make it happen, you kind of have to be able to present something to someone to make them say, hey, wow, this could work for me. Without it, it doesn't work.
I think the biggest hangup here for everybody is the vans that are there right now. I mean, I think that's what the issue is.
I'll tell you how to solve the problem. Stop buying Amazon. There you go. There'll be no need for these vans.
Right? I'll tell my
Yeah.
wife.
There you go. Everybody look around, and he who has not sinned, throw the first stone. Yeah, all right. So that's not going to happen because everybody's in bed with Amazon. Everybody has the stocks. Everybody buys the product. Everybody's doing everything with Amazon. I don't, but that's me.
Bill, can you share this again?
What's that, the site plan?
Yeah. The one that actually shows the parking spaces?
Yeah, hold on a second, I'll pull it up.
Oh, Bill, while you're pulling that up, is this something conservation should have looked at before we can even make a decision? I just don't want to waste his or everybody's time if we can't even decide on this.
Well, the conservation issues, I don't think are that significant. There is a small portion of this bioretention area in the buffer zone. I don't think that's a deal breaker at all. Here's the 100-foot wetland buffer. So this portion of the bioretention area is in the buffer zone, but I think that could be, part of an order of conditions that I don't think would make or break the project one way or the other. This
Okay,
one down.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to throw another wrench in his plans here.
Yes, I mean, the Conservation Commission obviously has separate jurisdiction, so if they had a decision that affected the site plan, he'd have to come back to the planning board for reapproval of the site plan.
Please don't say that.
Okay, so now that this is back up, I have a question for Mr. Dubois. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that this proposed plan right now, 486 spaces, that this is only actually using this front section over here that's in bold black lines?
No, the overall site that's proposed right now is, as shown, is 488 spaces. I'm not sure why those lines are showing up darker. It could just be the PDF image or something.
Okay.
Yeah, but all of those, every row there comes, that's what makes up the 488 spaces.
Okay.
All of that.
And you can actually see in each row, there's like a number with a circle around it that shows you how many spaces are in each section.
Okay. All right. So how far over, when I'm looking at this all the way over to the right there, how far past that is the actual lot line?
Dimension wise, I mean,
This is it over here, so,
it goes to it's almost
Wow.
600 feet to the property line.
Okay. And your understanding is that he could potentially in the future go up to 1,000 spaces there before it triggers a major site plan review?
No, it's not major site plan review. It's MIPA, so it's like a big state, a state MIPA, Mass Environmental Protection Agency. When you get into real big projects, it triggers MIPA studies, and one of their trigger points is 1,000 vehicle parking lot. But we're under 500, and I don't know that he could fit 1,000 on this site. I just said size wise, he's not even utilizing half the site, but that right third of the site is a wetland area. So, I mean, you wouldn't be able to use that area anyways.
all this in here is wetland.
Oh, it is?
And plus we'd still need to keep drainage and things like that, detention basins intact. So, he could fit more spaces, but I don't know how many, maybe another couple hundred.
But right now, we're only talking about 488. Just so we don't get too far off what we're trying to solve a problem here.
It's good to know what's potentially coming.
So the planning board is getting into the specifics of the site plan right now. I'm assuming that means everybody is fine with the zoning, right? We all got a thumbs up there. We can move into the number of spots.
The site plan? Are you talking about the site plan? Are we happy with the site plan?
Well, you guys just had the site plan on the screen for the past 20 minutes. So I'm figuring you're talking about spaces and everything else. So we're not even past the zoning yet. So I'm trying to figure out, everybody must be okay with the zoning then, right?
I think we're playing fast and loose with the interpretation, but I think Peter was the one to bring it up. He said he didn't write the rules. He's just found a way to exploit it in his favor.
I definitely did not say that.
Well, I'm paraphrasing, but I know what you meant.
Listen, I'm just trying to go through life like everybody else. You know, it's I got a dead piece of property over here. I got an opportunity. Like I said, I'll never complain about paying over $7,000 for taxes here a year. Just give me an avenue to make money. That's all I ever said.
Yeah, unfortunately, our decision has absolutely nothing to do with Peter making money or not making money. It has to do with what's laying before us, zoning regulations, town bylaws, and interpretation of the same. So still trying to get some kind of a yay or nay on the zoning. My thought is that if we're all in agreement that the leasing, I say again, leasing of vehicles falls under this zoning, then we can proceed to the next step, which would be, is there any concerns about the number of spaces? But also, though, by agreeing to the leasing of vehicles, it doesn't allow for the site to be used for delivery vans or other items that aren't the leasing of vehicles as they are now. We couldn't, we're not going to be seeing Amazon in there. We're not going to be seeing a bunch of 18-wheelers in there who are delivering things. We got to take this one step at a time. And if you guys still want to talk about the lot lines and size of the parking spaces, we've already been here for an hour and 10 minutes, and go to work tomorrow morning. So what do you got?
Well, then the bylaw is clear on parking of light commercial vehicles. So I think that would be a limitation as to the type of vehicles that could park there. So that would probably exclude passenger vehicles. It'd have to be a leasing company that leases light commercial vehicles.
Right, and that's the whole point. Once we agree to that, then we're locking out a bunch of other options, and we're keeping this to, I think, the direction we want to go. We don't want to see 500 Amazon vans in there who clog up Main Street. We don't want to see a bunch of smaller school bus vehicles that go to every neighbor in town every morning at 7 o'clock and come back every night at 4 o'clock. We're looking for the leasing of vehicles, and that limits then, Peter, to a company who brings certain amount of vehicles on site, stores them there, and then as their clients need them, take them off. But it's not a daily back and forth. So that's
exactly.
Why if we're making the decision about leased vehicles, then we're protecting the town, we're protecting our interests, also allowing this conversation to continue.
So, Mr. Chairman, whatever we decide then would have those stipulations, and it would be that specific in terms of the stipulations. Is that what you're suggesting?
Right, so what I'm suggesting is this: if we're all in agreement with the zoning, and then we can get on to, okay, how many, are we comfortable with the number of vehicles? Are we comfortable with the layout of the parking lot? We've got through most of this already. We've reviewed the site plan. We have Graves' input on that. And then when it actually comes time for Peter, when it's actually leased, and he has a tenant, he has someone who's going to be an occupant,
right,
he has to go for an occupancy permit, and Nelson takes care of that. Correct, Nelson?
Correct. That's what it says in the bylaws.
If Peter's, after our decision, we're making leased vehicles, when Peter comes back and whatever time frame it says, hey, I got a guy who's gonna have 1,000 rental or 1,000 delivery vans in there, that's not gonna be an allowed use, and then Nelson would not give them an occupancy permit. So they couldn't use it.
Dan, you're saying delivery vans would not be considered light commercial vehicles?
I'm not arguing that, but I'm saying they're not leased. So that would, for me, the distinction would be that delivery vans would all have license plates on them. Delivery vans would be in and out of there every single day. To our police chief's comments, he wants to have more information on the traffic. The information provided to us, where I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm just going to throw something that's relatively light traffic, 6 vehicle trips a week. If they're going to be delivery vehicles, we're talking about 400 traffic occurrences a day. And there's a huge difference there. That's the police.
It's not going to
be for protection on.
Yeah, you can put it right in there. It's not going to be an Amazon parking lot for people to come in to park their cars, get into the van, go drive off, make deliveries. leave that
And
to
for the
some other
planning board,
town.
we don't care if it's Amazon or if it's
Yep.
Cabela's,
Anybody.
whatever.
Maybe
We can be
the,
honest with the company is we want to distinguish between a leasing location and a delivery van parking lot.
so maybe the problem is the definition of delivery van, because when I think of it, I think the Amazon vans sitting right there now, I think are delivery vans, even though they're currently not being used for that purpose. But I think that's, so maybe the
No, but that's
distinction
exactly
should
what
be
I'm getting at.
registered versus unregistered.
Do you want to make a roll call of who agrees on the zoning?
Hmm?
Wait, do you want to make like a roll call on who agrees on the zoning? And
Yeah,
then
we
we
can-
can, and then we can go, then we can get,
It's the whole
then we
thing
go
about
get
use.
to the next phase.
You know, once we just determine the use, which is part of the zoning, and we say it's a leased vehicle, there's a difference between a leased vehicle and a delivery van that gets taken out every day. There's a totally different business scheme for that. There's a difference between a distribution center and between a parking lot at the side of a railroad track for vehicles that get unloaded from a train. Right? This gives Nelson more direct, more concrete direction to go on whenever he's looking, whenever the owner is looking for an occupancy permit.
I agree. I don't have a problem with the roll call on the zoning if you want to go like a roll call, so this way we can get to the next phase.
Okay, so to that
And-
point, if we,
Just real quick, Dan, I just want to make sure I understand. We're at this point, we're going to do a roll call vote on whether or not we agree with the zoning, but not necessarily, this would not be a vote affirming that we think that Peter has met that threshold of qualification, correct?
Right.
yeah, what do you mean by met?
Meaning, we talked about existing business. We talked about when he gets a leasing company in there.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. This is
Okay.
all for when he applies the occupancy permit, so. I'm gonna word this in this manner, that looking for a roll call vote that the leasing of vehicles, of light commercial vehicles in the Business 15 district is allowed under motor vehicles, rental, sales, and service. And that in the residential 30, the parking of leased vehicles is allowed as an accessory use. Steve, you okay?
Yes.
You sure? Okay.
Okay.
Lou? Thumbs up. Bill?
Yep.
All right, so we're okay with the zoning. Now, to Lou's point, next step would be number of spots, Lou, or?
Sorry. I think that would be the number of spots, and then after that, any restrictions that we have. I guess we could do number of spots and restrictions.
Does anybody have concerns about the number of spots?
Yes.
What's your concern? Just a number?
Yeah, well, I think that we're the ones who should be able to make the decision on how many spots we consider to be accessory use, correct?
Correct.
And I do not believe that 486 spots well, actually, I guess, is it the 400? I just want to make clarification here. Mr. DuBois, is the 486 spots all in the residential area, or is that 486 including what's in the business area?
It's including the business as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do we have a breakdown by any chance of how many of those are actually in the residential?
I could get you a quick.
I bet you it's like 440, 420, somewhere in there.
I mean, we can stuff more vehicles in the business side and make the opening for the turn in the residential side if it makes a difference to the board only about,
Well, my concern is that if if we're talking about 440 cars in the residential, that means that out of this 486, you're talking about 46 in the business. That's literally like a tenfold increase,
It's
10
prob-
times more.
It's probably about 360, 370 in the residential side.
I mean, you guys walk through here. Does it really seem residential? I mean, you got to kind of look at the site too. It's not like we're going to pull up a bunch of vehicles, you know, on the side of someone's house. This is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's a large commercial business just on that north property, right? You know, along the zone line, and there's also commercial on the western side, and there's really only one or two houses that even come in contact with this property.
You can't even see them.
Bill,
I
is there
think
any
you
way
guys,
that
if
you
you
can pull
saw,
up an
if you
aerial
saw the
image?
cars back there, you would have
Yes.
seen. You'd have to kind of look for the houses.
All right. Well, Dan, I would say then I would go with the pleasure of the other board members. What is their pleasure on this issue as to number of spaces? Are they okay with 486?
Richard, your thoughts?
Well, I think we started with what, 512 or 514 initially? And obviously 488 or 486 rather is going in the direction that I favor. I think that you may have more space available than actual use coming up as far as that's going. You know, you may have more seats in the stadium than you're actually going to be able to get fans to fit in them. I don't know what, Peter, you got somebody out there that's going to have exactly 486 vehicles in there at any given time, or is there going to be a range, I suspect, in terms of how many at any point in time?
Yeah, it's highly unlikely, but I would never say that at some point, you know, there couldn't be. I mean, there could be. You know,
You're planning for your retirement plan here when you can get all 486 filled and keep them filled, where you may not be retiring as young as you plan.
Yeah, I mean, I missed that by 20 some odd years already, but
yeah.
I think
and I would say too that you know, the comment's been made in terms of the area and whether it, you know, has the look of a residential or a business zone area. There are businesses all around it. If you go on Lyons Road, there's a landscaper there who has vehicles, which I don't think would meet that light commercial vehicle category that we've been discussing at length here, probably over that. And there's another individual who's running some sort of an electrical business too. I mean, and it's compromised at best. It's no longer clear as you look at the property, or if you walk the property, if you walk the area, it's not clear as to what's commercial and what's residential, other than what is on Eisenhower Drive. That clearly is residential, but otherwise it's kind of a toss-up from the appearance of it and from the use that's been allowed around it.
Bill, your thoughts?
I'm okay with the number of spaces, only because of the location. I mean, you know, like Richard said, it's more of a commercial setting, and you can walk across the street and over, and McGee Toyota has probably 200 or 300 cars parked over there at any given time. I mean, and they're more visible than Peters will be, so I have no problem with the number of spaces.
Lou?
I have no problem with the amount of vehicles. It's just the limitations that we need to hammer out.
When we first started talking about this, I had major issues with the number of vehicles. In the meantime, I've been out there 3 or 4 times at least. I've been out there more in the when we didn't have as many leaves on the trees, and I was out there just yesterday as well. Softening up big time to the number of vehicles. Just a hypothetical question, maybe more for Jason. The parking is kind of right against is the wrong word, but is close to the southern border of the site, which borders that one residential. What are the possibilities of losing possibly 7 rows of stalls and moving them more towards the northern site? portion of the site. Is that a major hassle? Is it possible?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I'd have to reconfigure, grading and some drainage,
Yeah.
to make it all work. But, like I said, it is possible. I mean, also, we do have a vegetated buffer there, of arborvitae's planted every 7 feet on center in that area. And a 6-foot solid, fence to, provide some screening from the neighbors. And they also have woods in their backyard. Their house is right against the property.
My only thought was if we can lose, and maybe 7's exaggeration, because you could take, that's what, roughly 70 feet. You get some of those vehicles a little bit further away from the house, and granted, the vehicles won't be moving that often, but you just kind of have more of a reduction of noise for the abutter there. Just a thought. Is that kind of?
Yeah, this operation they only work till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yep.
So there's very seldom would there be a problem with noise.
All right. Steve, comments of the other planning board members. Are you okay with the 486 or?
Say that again, Dan?
Based on the opinions of the other planning board members, are you okay with the 486 number, the quantity?
Yeah, I've come around to that idea, sure. We walked the site together, and I think I agree with you, Dan, there's enough commercial stuff going on there. Yeah, I would say that I'm okay with the 486.
The actual number that Jason has here is 488. This number here, 488 total parking spaces.
Oh, forget it then.
Me to it. I almost said it.
Okay, 488.
Kind of an accessory question to the parking. Currently, we have the auto repair place there, and they have a good 15, 20 cars parked in the back. Are they going to be moved off this lot, or how are they going to deal with their cars and their parking situation?
They do have parking on the side of the building.
Yep.
So they probably have, I don't think, once or twice a year, they might park a car or two in the back. I mean, I can tell them not to if it makes a difference, but I mean, I don't think that, I think we'll always have extra parking.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to.
I tell you what, one of my concerns.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they had 20 dedicated spots or so for their vehicles. That way we wouldn't be cluttering the sides of the building or the front of the building with a bunch of cars that may or may not be in the perfect running order. If we kept them in the
they don't use the front at all.
Town picture.
No.
I think one concern I have would be keeping fire lanes clear. The distance between the setback and the building, is limited, and if you're parking cars along the property line, you might be restricting fire vehicle access. So I
That was
would
kind of my
think there
thought
might
when I'm
be.
talking about where the repair vehicles are sitting. There isn't much room to the right or to the left of the building, especially to the east with how we're looking at it here. And if all the spaces behind the building are being used for the leasing company, the auto repair or the auto body shop might all of a sudden have too many cars there so that the fire department can't get through.
No, I bought the house next door just to kick the parking over at the 259 West Main Street. So I've already adjusted the parking, probably over 8 or 10 feet on the easterly side.
Okay.
And it's clearly marked on the westerly side, the in and out with arrows in the, on the pavement, no parking. There's 4 big no parking signs. I would never want to stop a fire truck.
Right.
While we're on the subject, I want to get back to, we talked about those cars up in the corner there. Peter had described as his personal car collection that grew over the years. Those vehicles would have to be in these spaces. I don't want to see those vehicles shuffled off to the side and,
or in
the
the
woods over there down the other end or anything like that.
I mean, I have no real close personal attachment to any of those vehicles. I could send every one of them through the crusher tomorrow if it made a difference to you guys. I really don't care.
So we're good with the amount of cars. You want to talk about restrictions?
Yeah, just to close the amount of cars, I would kind of like to offer a restriction, see if the planning board's in agreement with it or not. We're showing near the 488 parking spaces. I would like to have something in there that the 488 includes vehicles for the repair shop. Can you do that?
Well, I think they would all be on the business zoned portion of the property. Right?
Yeah, agreed. Okay, never mind. Yeah, it's okay, Lou. So why don't you get into some of the restrictions you're looking for?
So we could probably do maximum GVW, 10,000 pounds.
10,000?
10,000. I looked up the Amazon vans that are there, and they're like 95, 40. So if we're at 10,000 GVWs, that's basically one of those vans and smaller.
I mean, that's okay if you're gonna stick with that. But man, I don't want to be down there all the time. And one's 11,000, and I got to write it up for it. I mean, that's pushing real close. And maybe you're right, Lou, but I'm just saying.
I mean,
Guys,
I think even some of the F-350s come in at 11,000 pounds.
Yeah, if I can just say, I mean, I have an F-250 and it's 10,000 pounds, and it's just a family pickup.
I don't even care if we do 12,000, but it should be specific because a dump truck.
No, you're right.
14, 15,000 GVWs.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even a 15,000 pound truck isn't that big.
An
I don't think they do
F-350 dump
anything
truck
like
is
that, but
14,000. Just an F-350 dump truck is 14,000 GVW.
Let's look it up.
I think it's a good idea to have some kind of restriction right now on the weight that we can all agree on. I don't think this is necessarily going to say that we're not going to allow anything else, but it does reopen the discussion. If for some reason there is a tenant who's going to have larger vehicles in there, it just reopens the discussion. So I kind of like the 12,000 number. I don't know if Jason, Peter, you guys think that's a little bit low, but I think
he is right on the F-350 is 14,000 pounds.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think over time you'll find that these vehicles keep getting larger and larger. I mean, if you took the F-150 of 10 years ago and compared to what's selling as an F-150 today, there's probably a significant weight difference. So whatever we set as a number is probably something that's going to have to be changed over time if this business is going to be around for, let's say, 10 or 15 years.
How much does like a box truck weigh?
So there you go. So let's just say anything under 26,000 pounds, so we don't get into the heavy duty dump trucks, because I'll never have that.
A 26-foot box truck weighs 26,000 pounds. A 24-foot box truck weighs 25,500 pounds. A 22-footer is 22,000 pounds, and a 20-footer is 14,500. So based on a 26-foot box truck is a good-sized box truck. Mm-hmm. So is that what we are going to allow in there? Because that's rather large. I would say we go the middle of the road and be at like a 22-footer and allow 22,000.
Well,
and I really think that's pushing.
If we're going to go with a vehicle that's longer than, quote unquote, the standard length that's going to be designed to fit into these parking stalls, we want to keep the gross vehicle weight down to the 12,000 range. If we're starting talking about box trucks that are 22, 26 feet long, I think if we then allow the 488, we're going to increase the pavement. We're going to increase the encroachment on the east side. So I think by now saying, 488 vehicles at 12,000 pounds, again, doesn't mean we're not going to allow or discuss anything else. It gives us some kind of a ground here for start on. If for some reason we want to put 30,000 pound vehicles in there, not a problem, but how about let's limit then to 225, just to throw a number out there. I mean.
Well, just for the record, a parking spot is 18 feet long and 9 feet wide.
Right.
These are designed as 20-foot long.
Yeah, they're a bit bigger.
So if you look at the 20-footer, the 20-foot truck weighs the same as the F-350, 14,000 pounds.
I think we might be getting into actual vehicle weight versus GVW. Like a 26.
That's the GVW weight of a 20-foot box truck. Average GVW, 14,500 pounds.
Right, GVW, yeah.
I think Peter was talking about leased passenger vehicles.
Yeah, mainly. I mean, I don't know if at some point, like, I know when they got into this Amazon deal, this situation, this leasing company, it's kind of like a out of the normal. You know, it is normally smaller SUVs, Camrys, stuff like that. But it is a possibility.
But the problem is, Bill, is if we don't put a GVW restriction and we say it's just vehicles, then they can go up. At least this gives the building inspector, all he's got to do is open the door and say, no, the restrictions were 14,000 GVWs. You got a truck here that's 29,000 that wasn't allowed. So it's very specific and enforceable.
So what's the weight of a full-size SUV? Because it sounds like would be the biggest passenger vehicle you could.
Give me a second. I got fat
Well,
fingers.
the parking
Sound right,
stalls
Peter?
Why don't we go with
are
any
limited to
Class
20
A licensed vehicle?
So
You know,
I don't
so
think you
it
park
doesn't
the vehicle
exceed the
longer than
26,000
20
pounds.
feet in these spaces. So maybe that's, a 22,000 GVW vehicle might be longer than 20 feet.
Yeah, why don't you just do Class A vehicles? Then it's all just vehicles that you need you just need a standard driving license to drive.
Well, my
it simple.
point is, again, if we start talking about vehicles that are 24, 26 feet long, and if we're going to be held to our 488 number, that would theoretically give you the green light to expand on the amount of paved area there, to start encroaching further towards the wetlands. And I think that's what we're comfortable with the 488 in this space, but we may not be comfortable with 488 that has 50% of the space more. That's why based on the number of parking spaces, the size of the parking spaces being 9 by 20, which aren't going to allow larger box trucks in there. It just seems to me for this purpose, and again, we're not approving the final use. If you have someone who comes in here and wants to rent this or lease it from you, and he's got bigger trucks, this is just discussion. Again, we may not have 488, we might only have 300 spots, but it's just going to be a.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree because I know what Bill LePage is saying, but on the other hand, I don't think Peter wants to put himself in a situation where he thinks right now it's going to be passenger vehicles because he's got somebody that he's leaning towards having passenger vehicles. But then what if the company that does the Amazon vans comes back knocking and gives you an opportunity and says, hey, we'd like to sign with you. You don't want to be in a situation where you say, well, gee, I can't take you because I agreed that the planning board would stipulate that we would only allow passenger vehicles. So
why don't we go with this? We'll just use whatever area it is that has the 488 spaces. We'll never exceed that area. So if you could only fit, let's say 300 vehicles in that area, then it's 300. But never to exceed 488. Like we can't go over whatever we'll have a set boundary for whatever that space is.
Well, a GMC Denali GVW is 10,850 pounds. My thing is, if we just allow him not to exceed the boundaries, that doesn't mean he's not going to get big box trucks in there that are diesels. And in the middle of the winter, when there's no leaves, those arborvitaes are not going to protect the residents from seeing big box vans and them warming up in the middle of the winter, a diesel truck. So, I mean, we need to be smart and make it more enforceable, but fair to Peter at the same time. That's why I think GVWs is very important, because it's very specific. And if you're never going to get a large box van or a dump truck or a triaxle or even a big tow truck or anything in there, because it's going to exceed the GVWs, and then there's no gray area for the building inspector to enforce it.
All right. So Lou, what was the recommendation you had for a number?
Well, I was originally at 10,000, but then I looked at the Ford F-350 and it was 14,000. So taking that into consideration, I would say 14,000 would be a fair GVW for Peter. I mean, I'm open to discussion with Peter if he agrees with me or disagrees. I don't want to hurt a business. I want to help promote business, but at the same time, we have a duty to the people that live around there as well.
And from what you're seeing, Lou, would 15,000 put us in the danger zone of actually a small box truck?
No.
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 Okay, then what about 15,000?
I'd be okay with 15,000 because the first box truck that comes up is 20 feet and it's 20,000. So all the building inspector has to do is roll in, open the door, and say, "Hey, Peter." And Peter's like, "Well, it's just a small box, man." Well, look at the door sticker. It's 20,000 GVWs. You exceeded the board's.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to limit myself with that because even if it's because there's like box vans everywhere, and back here no one sees anything. I mean, you have to come back here to see anything. I mean, I don't think they deal in box vans at all, but I wouldn't want to limit myself. That's why I wish it was 26,000 pounds or under. And if you wanted to limit the amount of diesel vehicles, I mean, I'm all for that. You know, but this isn't the type of operation that where they're going to show up and start up 10 diesel trucks to go out for delivery. These are cars that are just going to move in and out to, you know, people that lease vehicles.
Yeah, but I don't agree with 26,000. I mean, I like the 15 because that puts us in the range of that these are going to be, you know, small commercial vehicles or passenger vehicles. And
So Steve, sorry to cut you off, but just to put things in perspective, I just looked online what a FedEx truck is. And everybody knows what the FedEx truck is, like a milk van truck.
Mhm.
Their GVW weight is 23,000 pounds.
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong here. If we basically bless the 488 parking spots, and let's just say we call it at 18,000, 20,000 gross GVW. Peter has a tenant that has larger trucks and they want less spaces or comparable in a comparable area. This is simply going to just reopen the discussion where we would be able to give it a check. Okay, no problem, and then pass it on to Nelson for the occupancy, correct? This isn't going to require a whole new major site plan review. It's just going to be a revision to the hearing, right?
Well, you'd be approving the site plan, so that would define the limit of work that could take place on the property. If you wanted to increase the paved surfaces, you'd have to come back to the planning board for modification.
But it wouldn't be the paved surfaces, it'd be the amount of spaces. And it would ask us to review the allowable limits.
Well, you know, Jason had laid out 9 by 20 foot parking spaces. So that provides a maximum of 488. So I think that's the maximum number of vehicles that could park there.
At that size.
If he's doing larger vehicles, then obviously you can't park as many vehicles if the individual vehicle size is larger. So I think,
I guess what I'm trying to go at is that we're getting kind of hung up on the GVWs right now. And if we go and say, yes, this site plan is showing 488 vehicles, and based on the 9 by 20 parking stall, we're only going to get vehicles that are roughly 15,000 kVW. If something else is wanted or needed, we're going to have to see a different site plan with a different configuration, with different drive aisles, correct? So it's going to come up again.
Mr. Chairman,
yep.
Am I rightness in what I'm reading into what you're saying is that no vehicles to exceed the size of that 20 by 9 space.
That's what
as
the site
opposed
plan
to getting
implies,
into
yes.
to any kind of a weight issue, we just get into a size issue in terms of the vehicle. No vehicle larger than that space of 9 by 20.
I think that just as the simple size of the vehicle slots implies or infers what the vehicle weight can be. And we're just kind of iterating that because we don't have a definition of a light commercial vehicle. And if
but if you have those, the way the lot lines are laid out,
vehicles, then we can revisit that. We have the size of the parking lot. We're going to have to see a new site plan with a new layout anyway. I don't see where the big problem is. We're not
Well,
closing the
I don't
door.
know
We're
whether,
just looking for an avenue of approval right now.
Peter, I don't know if Peter would want to come back with a revised plan before you vote.
Oh my
to
God,
Show
no.
larger
Yeah.
sizes.
Yeah.
But if we vote for a plan showing 488 spots, 9 by 20 stalls, that gets approved. Asphalt's being laid, and all of a sudden, Peter signs up a tenant who wants 20-foot box trucks in there. The 9 by 20 stalls aren't gonna work. You're just gonna park willy-nilly all over the place? Are we gonna have to see some kind of a new striping plan? Potentially some kind of a different lighting? I mean, there's gonna be some kind of revisions to the plan that are gonna be necessary to accommodate those vehicles. Am I right, Jason?
Yes.
And then that would require them pretty much to say, hey, look, we have a revision. What are you guys' thoughts? Discussion, we're good.
Yeah, I guess it would probably be, we'd have to apply for like an amended, site
Correct.
plan approval.
Right,
Yeah, it could be a minor modification kind of process.
right. But still,
And
they're coming back to us and we're discussing it again. So right now, if we're talking about 18,000 or 50,000, I don't know how relevant that is because we have the size of parking spots. But since we don't have the light commercial vehicle as a definition, we need to put something on there. At least it's a placeholder for now.
Yeah, let's go with just a Class A licensed vehicle, 26,000 pounds or less. And I think these Amazon vans are like 23 feet long, aren't they?
Also to point out, it's not always the size of the vehicle that determines the actual weight that it can carry. You can have a small dump truck, like an F350 or 450 or 550. They're all pretty much the same size truck. And those go up to like 19,500 GVW, and they would all fit in that space.
In a 9-by space?
What? Yeah, I have an F550 that's 19.5, and it'll fit in a standard parking space. It's all about how the springs and everything underneath the truck is made.
Yeah, the rear end, everything, the weight.
Yeah, and if you parked it here, I'd be in violation.
I do have one question though, being zoning officer. Here's one problem we're gonna have. Peter, you're gonna hate me about this one.
Well, this is why I'm trying to save us.
Heavy vehicles are not gonna be allowed in that back. Anything over 26,000 either way is gonna be heavy. Here's your problem. You've got.
Yeah, no, that's why I say let's
you've got
go with
backhoes,
26,000 pounds, and that'll save you and I from having a whole bunch of
You're gonna move
discussion.
all them up to the front? And do you have space for all them up the front? And if you don't, let's address it right now.
What's that?
All your heavy stuff, your bulldozer, your big bulldozer there, your backhoe, your plow truck, that's all over 25,999. So they all supposed to be parked in that business 15. Are you going to be able to do that?
Never
mind.
Yeah, I could take up prime real estate with the equipment. I guess you want to count.
I guess yes or no.
You want to count the equipment as vehicles for?
Yeah, it's heavy equipment, Peter. It's heavy.
I know, but
there's no doubt about it, and it's not allowed. I don't want to get into technicalities, but when I get a complaint, I gotta resolve a complaint, and I can see it coming on that somebody's going to.
Well, because what do I do with the site equipment?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking right now.
That's what I'm saying. Can we make a stipulation for anything that I own personally, used by myself?
No, you got a dozen cars back there that you own.
Yeah, hey, like I said, I can send every one of those cars to the crusher. I don't care. But I'm talking about, if I have to move the bulldozer to somewhere in the parking lot because I can't keep it on the field the next time I want to, push a pile over, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of hung up on that. I'd hate to have Nelson come and find me because
storing it there isn't going to be allowed. So we're going to come up with some kind of solution, but I'd rather come up with it tonight so I ain't back.
So you're saying you have a problem with the equipment now?
Your zoning bylaw does. It clearly states you can't have them there. I'm going through this right now on Schofield Ave. They're going to say to me, "Why are you letting Peter do it? I can't do it." And then what do I say? So I got to be fair. So yeah, you can't do it, Peter. That's what I'm saying, unless it's in business 15.
Okay, I guess I'll move him to the business 15. Can I use them on?
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to have to rent a piece of equipment to.
You can't
use them. You just can't store
sit there for 6 months or a year, and you're telling me you're using them because I can see that coming too.
Okay, fair
I
enough.
guess my next question is, where are you gonna store them in that business 15? It's pretty congested there now.
Well, I guess I'll have to pick a spot. I don't know, somewhere.
I think it should be picked tonight before they make their decision.
I
I'm getting tired of this, how long this is going on.
oh my God.
Finding you
They-
already. I wrote 3 letters to that effect. This needs to get resolved tonight if it can. If I can't,
Okay.
I got the same
Let's,
problem.
I mean, I can't say where I'll park them because I'm gonna move them as I use them. I mean, let's say I had it in one spot and someone took the parking spot to park a car, and I got to park it somewhere else. As long as I'm in the business 15, can we leave it a gray area so I don't have to use an actual dedicated parking spot? Because I don't want to get fined if it's 15 feet from where I tell you it
In a
is. Right
business
now.
15 somewhere.
There you go. We'll go with that.
Where are the 12 cars? Are they in the business 15?
No, they're up in the back of the,
In the residential?
yeah, they're way up in the back corner.
Okay.
And 12's not an exact number. It could be 15. There's somewhere.
I think it's like 9 or 10, but either way, if it's 15, like I said, I don't care. I can send them to the crusher.
Well, I know, but we're not telling you to send them to a crusher. It's not our place to tell you to crush your vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem. If the vehicles there are an issue, I can move them. It is absolutely no problem.
I'm just saying, I don't want those vehicles to be strewn about the outer perimeter of the asphalt parking lot down the road, or shuffled down that far end where, towards the wetlands there. But we know that there's more, as Mr. Dubois already said, there's more property there. There's room down there, but we don't want you sticking them down there.
Hey, Dan, I'm thinking that, it's getting kind of late and we're getting tired. I'm wondering if we should continue the hearing to another meeting. And in the meantime, I could write a draft decision, which would be an approval with conditions that we could talk about at the next meeting in terms of setting the specific conditions. So at least we'd have something drafted to react to. And I wouldn't, certainly expect that I would come up with a perfect decision, but it would be at least a start for moving this to a decision at the next meeting.
Well, if you're going to consider that, then we need to move this meeting. We have to move this current conversation to what about the vehicles that are there now that are in violation? What is the disposition of those vehicles? Are we going to continue to let those stay there?
I mean, I don't think there's any of the townspeople that are really concerned about the vehicles they can't see in the back. I think the only people that are really concerned are the board members. So it's up to you guys if
Well,
you can.
I understand that, but what if we adjourn the meeting tonight and then tomorrow 20 more show up?
Why don't we continue the meeting until we just get through this and just get this approval and then not have to worry about a letter or another meeting. I mean, I don't think we're hung up on much. I think we're right at the end. I mean, we got the approval. Let's go for just say anything class A or less. And if it's the vehicles are too big for the parking space, then we'll have to sacrifice.
Correct you too. You keep saying class A, you're wrong. It's class C. Class A is tractor trailer stuff.
There you go. That shows you how little I know. But you know what I'm saying. It's 26,000 pounds or less.
20,
I'm not looking to put big vehicles in there.
$25,999 you can have.
Trucks. Yeah, I'm not. That's not the nature of the way the business is going to be.
Nelson, when we get done here and let's just assume we get an approval, the lot is built, do you need to issue some kind of a certificate of occupancy or not?
Yes, the bylaw states I'm supposed to issue a CFC, certificate of compliance. In other words, he has to be compliant with the site plan requirements that you're putting on it tonight or whatever, when you finish it.
So if
I'm actually going to take that plot plan with me when I go there before I sign up. And usually the planner goes with me too. And sometimes we might allow certain things that aren't quite finished and we give them a temporary occupancy. I guess
what I'm going
those vans there. Well, first of all, because you had talked about what's an accessory to. And I was getting the impression that those vans aren't gonna be allowed there. So I'm not sure if they are or aren't yet, but I guess you're gonna make it clear either before the night's through or whatever. I just want a direction, you know?
It's kind of where I'm going is that you were talking about the existing vehicles there. Even if we were to agree right now, this instant, that the 488 at the whatever tonnage is all good, in theory, that means it's good once this lot is constructed, once everything's squared away, and once Nelson gives his certificate of occupancy. That wouldn't necessarily mean that just because we say it's okay that those 100 vehicles, whatever, can stand there on gravel in the middle of a parking lot without proper drainage. So I don't know what to say to this, quite frankly, other than kind of repeating what Bill stated. It's getting late. We need to come to some kind of a resolution here. There's other items on the list, on our agenda, right, Bill?
Yes.
At 10 o'clock, hard stop bylaws. So
How about 16,000 GVW?
Deal. Okay, move on.
Gentlemen, what do you think of 16,000?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Do you want to address the existing vehicles now, Steve?
Now, when we're talking about the existing vehicles, we're not talking about his personal vehicles in the back there. We're talking about the Amazon vans, correct?
All right, so I'm at a loss here. Peter, you've got someone on site who is leasing those vehicles. You need to start construction at some point in time. So when you start construction, what's going to happen with all the vehicles?
I mean, the graveled area where the vehicles are now, we're really not going to do much, if anything, with that section. I don't really have to do much besides push some more loam off, bring some gravel in, and then whatever we have to do with the drainage on my end for the parking lot. I don't think it's a big deal. You know, it should be simple.
I think that the site plan that we've been looking at shows impervious surface, asphalt, shows surface of drainage to 2 detention basins, and that's the idea. I don't think the idea is to put gravel over it, and that's not the site plan approval that we're talking about here.
When Jay set the plan, he said he was going to go with pavement for the drainage in case we ever did pave it, so we didn't have to change anything. But it's not like my main intention to pave the area.
The plan calls for asphalt paving.
Needed areas of the parking.
Yeah, we have a pavement detail which shows 3.5 inches of pavement over, looks like 18 inches of gravel, Peter. So we're talking about a major reconstruction of the property for a parking lot.
If I can just step in too, I mean, originally at the hearing, you know, like Peter said, we did design the drainage to be worst case scenario, which would be for all impervious. But if it were to be gravel, the drainage and everything would still work. It would just, you know, work easier. Basically,
gravel doesn't drain.
Okay, all right. So I think, I can't speak for all the other board members, but I'm pretty sure that we were all under the impression at this point that this whole thing was going to be paved. And if what you're saying is correct, I want somebody to explain to me how the hell you're going to know where these parking lot lines are, because you got nothing to spray them onto because you're not paving it. And, you know, to Dan's point about, oh, how wide it is, how wide the lots, you've got the spaces, you've got the definitions of the dimensions of each space on there. Those are basically worthless if you can't define the space because you can't put paint down on pavement.
I don't even think gravel drains. Gravel's not impervious.
correct.
Yeah, so.
Oh, did you submit a site plan that you don't plan on sticking to?
Yeah, this is, no.
I mean, I guess if I have to pave it, I have to pave it. But yeah, when Jay and I first talked about it, he said, "I'll put it in for the pavement just so we have a worst case scenario watershed." And I said, "Okay."
No.
Oh, that's
Every
not
time we
fine.
keep getting closer to the goal line, you guys keep moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
honestly,
what I'm looking at, what I see in front of me now, it says proposed asphalt parking area.
Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
see it too.
specific in my mind.
And we're talking about parking spot widths, Mr. Dubois, and you even specifically said the widths, what they were gonna be.
yeah.
I
So
said they were 9 by 18, and you said, no, they're gonna be 24 by 20 or something to that effect.
yeah, let me just back up. I mean, again, this has been going on now for what, 5 or 6 months, and I think, you know, I've been so focused on this whole zoning thing that, you know, like I said, at the very beginning of this project, I think we mentioned that it was, you know, like asphalt millings, you know, gravel or asphalt millings. And we did design the drainage system to handle impervious, which the millings would basically, you know, become impervious, and you can paint them.
You
So
can.
did you just forget to her?
But if this needs to be paved, I mean, Peter, that's, you know.
I've been in the pavement business my entire life. And we pave major roads and highways to include the town of Dudley. And I've never seen the milled parking lot line striped.
I've seen it, but I mean, it's, you know, it's fine.
Well, I guess you
Peter.
can throw lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Peter, do you have any problem having to pave this?
I mean, I honestly did not factor in numbers for what it would cost to do the pavement. I guess you know, like,
How many square yards is it?
what is
How many square yards is that parking lot?
it's got to be like, what would it be, like 5 acres?
About 250,000 square feet.
250,000 square feet.
25,000 square yards about.
Times 0.056 equals times 3 is 4,666 ton. Would probably cost you $354,000 to pave that parking lot.
There you go. So yeah,
3 inches.
that's crazy.
Then it shouldn't be there.
That should have not been the plan that was proposed to us. It should have been proposed as a gravel parking lot then.
So do you want to put this to vote and deny the special permit as requested? Because we can do that right now, and that basically, and then Peter, you've got to fix those plans and present to us what you really want to try and do there.
And move your vans.
Yes, and move the vans.
Talk to me, Jay, on this one. What?
Do you want to continue, and I'll just change the note to say asphalt millings? I mean, nothing's going to change
or
as far as
gravel?
drainage or anything.
Or gravel? You know, the area is still the same.
Yeah, nothing's going to change on my engineering part of it.
And if there's a limit on cars, I can't go over the amount of cars. So really nothing's changed.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. If they change that to millings or gravel or whatever, would you guys be making a decision on that, or is that gonna go back to Graves, Bill, I guess, as I'm asking?
I would think it'd have to go to Graves.
So the plan's already got to go back to Grace for his typo, you know, comments. So he's going to see that.
What's the timeline we're under now?
I mean,
Don't we have a time limit on which we have to act?
Because of the COVID stuff, that's kind of a little bit, you know.
Bill probably can answer that question.
I can look it up.
Because of the COVID stuff, all of our deadlines were kind of
45 days or something.
And the only other thing is, if we do continue this, I just want a direction on the board of what they feel they would like to see me do as far as vans.
Well, we want them out. I'm not going to speak for the entire board. My opinion is all of those vehicles need to come out of there. If we want to give him a certain amount of time to make that happen, all those vehicles in the residential area need to come out of there if we're going to move forward with this. I mean, I don't want to see him just to continue business as usual, bring in more vehicles and just say, well, that he wasn't clear on what our wishes were.
I, for one, if this project isn't moving forward with an impervious service, I'm 100% against it right now. I want to hear from Graves Engineering as far as the water runoff. If it's not impervious, it doesn't drain. No sense even talk about detention basins then. I don't know what to say. I can't believe we've been talking for 2 hours about something, and in the last second we get told something else. I'm just myself right now. So
I'm just as blown away.
Yep.
Well, so then again, I float the question again. Do we want to take a vote on whether or not to approve this right now and basically deny it because it's not what we were told was going to be there? And then if Peter wants to reapply and basically show us a plan that shows this, this non-impervious surface, and let Graves Engineering look at that and start the clock over again.
I would recommend that we don't do that. I would say just request an additional continuance. Just tell Graves it's going to be compacted gravel or asphalt millings, and I mean, what is the board's? Is it just that the people aren't going to know where to put the vehicles? Is that why? Or I mean, obviously asphalt's prettier, but I mean, when you're talking, $400,000.
I think the difference is somebody mentioned putting lipstick on a pig. I think what we decided here is that we're putting a little more than lipstick on this pig. Was that what we looked at said proposed asphalt. That brings one thing to mind, to my mind anyway. And now what we're talking about is something entirely different. I don't know how much lipstick you can put on this pig, but the darn thing's going to be overloaded, and you'll have your 26,000 pounds.
I mean, I'm a little concerned. What if it didn't come up? What was the plan going to be here? Was the plan going to be to let us approve this and then turn around?
No,
and just...
absolutely not. The problem is that we've been so focused on this whole zoning issue for the last 4 months that I think that detail just kind of slipped right by my mind.
Well, that's a little more than a detail.
I'm being 100% honest.
Well,
I'm being more than a detail.
If you look at the plan, I thought it said 3 inches of bituminous concrete. Bituminous concrete is a laid asphalt. Asphalt millings is millings. It wouldn't say bituminous concrete.
And why would you worry about stormwater runoff and all of that stuff and all those calculations if it's not going to run off anywhere because it's going to just percolate into the gravel?
It's still going to run off. It's not going to.
Mr. Chairman, I say we vote.
Why don't we ask Graves for their opinion on that?
Lou, you want to make a motion?
I'm just trying to get pick the chairman's brain mind here for a second, and just think we should vote. And then the next fee is what we're enforcing.
We've gone
We
as
just
far.
don't have all the information. We don't have all the information in front of us, and it's not correct information.
I mean, if the applicant wants to revise the plan, I think we should hold off on voting until we can see the revised plan. If they don't want to revise the plan, then I think you could deny it based on the fact that you don't intend to build it as proposed.
Can we do this, guys? Because honestly, I never planned on spending $300,000 or $400,000 to pave this. Can we get a revised plan, get it to Graves, and then pick it up at the next meeting and keep everything just the way it is?
Bill, what does that do to our timeline as far as deadline?
Well, we obviously need to request a continuance from the applicant in order to do that.
I'll do that. If you do this for me, absolutely, I would do that.
Okay.
We still got to talk about the Amazon vans. Is the town, are we, as a board, are we gonna allow the vans to be there, or are we gonna enforce some regulations?
In my mind, if Peter wants us to move forward with this and continue to work with him on this, then we need to stop this current operation that's going on, which is not permitted, which is those vehicles being in the residential area. They need to come out of there. And like I said, if we want to give him a little bit of time, because I know he's going to coordinate, he's going to make some phone calls and explain to whoever it is that he's working with right now that he can't have those vans there. I'm willing to give him a little bit of time to get those out of there, but that those vehicles need to be out of there, and that he needs to be in compliance with the current situation, which is the current situation is he does not have permission to do that.
I mean, I can stuff them all within the 530 feet. I can, but please just explain to me why.
Because you have not gotten approval to do what you wanted us to give you approval to do. You just went and did it.
What I'd like to do is just kind of have a compromise here, and I think try to keep everybody happy. First point is, we started meeting once a month, starting last month, just because of the difficulties with Zooms, trying to get paperwork and everything together. It kind of didn't really help any. We're still, everybody, this made public our next meeting. Everybody's getting this things kind of, at the quote last minute, which is normal. Business is normal. So I would recommend that we go back to our every second week. So we meet again in 2 weeks. I would recommend that Peter and Jason go back and revise the plans. Once we get those plans, we can reach out to Graves Engineering. In the meantime, I can go through our bylaws and a bunch of other documents and try to figure out exactly where we stand. Since we're only meeting in 2 weeks, I would recommend that Nelson has a letter already to Peter stating maximum of 100 vehicles. Let's let that stand for 2 more weeks, would be my recommendation. And that way we can hopefully pick this up in 2 weeks and then come to some kind of a conclusion then.
So we're going to continue the public hearing.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hearing what you're saying. I ain't got no problem with it. When you said 2 weeks and then meet again, when you meet in that 2 weeks, then it has to go to Graves. Is there any way they can get that to Graves before that 2 weeks that he could review it, Bill, or no?
Bill, can they answer a
question
previous without having a plan in front of them? Is that okay?
Or maybe Jason could quickly whip up, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jason.
No, yeah, like I said, I don't have,
in other words, I don't, I'm trying to cut this 2 weeks to 2 weeks and not.
Yeah, no, I was kind of hoping that we could get Graves to give feedback for that meeting.
Yeah, I could ask. I don't know what their schedule's like now, but I could certainly try to push Jeff to get it done in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's just changing some wording on the.
Yeah, I think he have more of just a written opinion than another review. It's not going to be.
Jason, you might have to revise the stormwater report, and he might have to have calculations in order to make his determination. Is that going to be required?
In the past, like I said, we designed this to be asphalt. That's always the worst case scenario, and he's probably gonna, have the same opinion. So I don't think the stormwater has to be revised. If anything, it's gonna be more of a conservative design the way it is now if it goes to gravel.
So you wouldn't propose to change the drainage system at all?
No, if I did, it would get smaller. The system would get smaller.
Okay. Then why don't we just, contact Graves and ask him, if he can give us an opinion of what are we talking about? Gravel, compacted gravel surface? Jason, what are you proposing as a surface?
Yeah, any compacted gravel, asphalt millings, it would all fall into the same category as far as engineering and stormwater.
And we're still going to have the applicant request a continuance, correct?
Yes, I'll get Peter a form tomorrow that he can sign and send back in right away.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, one more question. So that next week or the next 2 weeks goes maybe smoother, maybe. What about as far as the location of the parking spaces? Would it be millings and you would actually mark that? Because that's going to be kind of important as far as Peter be able to organize that in the back and keep his alleyways and fire trucks going through and all that. So maybe
I
quickly.
mean, this is kind of up to Graves. I mean, I'm not a civil engineer. I don't know all the answers to stormwater runoff, to percolation, to vehicle droppings, if it's oil or gas spilled. I don't have all these answers. I don't know if within 200 feet of the buffer zone for the wetlands, how that affects everything. My personal opinion right now is that, you know, we need impervious. So I'm not concerned about the markings or anything right now. I'm looking for Graves to hopefully answer that question, why impervious would not be needed, if that's permissible, and we can go from there.
You know, I'm sorry, Dan, I just thought of something because you mentioned it there. Bill, you had sent us something a while back regarding the fire chief, something about whether or not, with that amount of vehicles being parked there, whether or not there was going to need to be a hydrant back there. Did we get a decision from the fire department or the fire chief on that?
No, I don't recall that issue coming up with this property, Steve. I don't think I've gotten an opinion from the fire chief yet.
Okay, I thought I remembered seeing some paperwork regarding that, but.
There was an
well, I
issue with
guess
the
we could-
hydrant on the Lions Estate subdivision.
Yeah, we could cross that when we come to it, I guess.
I don't think you need a hydrant back there. There's not going to be a water line going into the parking lot.
Okay, all right.
But I did contact the chief today to see if they had any other comments, and he's just been, flat out with the public health crisis. So I haven't heard from him on this site plan.
So just to move, just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, we're going to allow the extension, and we're going to give them a 2-week grace period on the Amazon vans. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation, correct?
Okay.
Does it have to be in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman, or is it something we vote on, or is it just a continuation as to be requested by Peter?
Question for Bill. Do we need to vote on anything here?
No, I don't think a vote is required. Everybody's, it's a consensus opinion.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say tired.
That too.
Not to exceed 100 vehicles.
All right. So I guess,
You hear that?
guys, yeah, feel your pain. Feel your pain, Peter. All right, we can, or not close. We'll continue the public hearing at the next meeting. If I can see the agenda for the next item.
Approval of minutes.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jason.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Jesus Christ.
Nothing else on page 1? We got to 1 page already? All right. Approval of minutes.
We did that already?
Yep,
Yeah, we did that first thing, right?
Yes.
yep.
Yeah, all right, perfect.
Yep.
A&R plans, we've got nothing. Status report on finishing construction of and acceptance of uncompleted, unaccepted division streets. Pierpont, anything, Bill?
For the record, Mr. Sakara obtained variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for all of the lots that are undersized now as a result of the zoning map change. So he has permission to build on those undersized lots through the variances. He's got a year to exercise the variance, in which if he hasn't built on them by then, he'd have to reapply to the ZBA for new variances for those lots.
All right. Rock Hill?
I don't have any information on Rocky Hill or Piastre Road. Country View Estates, Eisenhower Drive, because of the COVID crisis and the fact that a couple of the sewer employees have been out of commission, two of the workers broke ankles, I believe. They haven't been able to complete the work to the sewer pump station. So that's on hold until things get back to a state of normalcy.
I thought that was being contracted out.
It was a combination, Bill. They were going to have to bring in a company that had a crane large enough to set the concrete ringer on the pump
Oh,
station.
okay.
But
Okay.
the sewer crew itself would do a lot of the work around that.
Okay.
Tobin Farm?
Dan, you and I had a conference call today on that project. The intent is to try to bring this to town meeting for acceptance. There's the conference call today was with John Ruder, the town administrator, Vinnie Paletta, the highway superintendent, and George Slingo, who is the developer of the project, and Dan and myself to discuss some waivers that the planning board may have approved in the past and some remaining items that need to be completed. It looks like George is going to move forward on completing the remaining items that have to be finished according to an agreement that was reached back in 2018. And then if that work is done promptly, it's possible that we can get the item on the town meeting warrant for the 22nd, in which case the town meeting could vote to accept the streets within the subdivision. So I think it's going to be tight whether this can actually be accomplished or not, but the game plan is to try to make it work and come together so that the streets could be accepted. The town bylaw says that street acceptances can only occur at the spring town meeting. So if we're not able to pull it off for this meeting in June, then it would have to wait till the next spring town meeting in 2021. Dan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. Back in 2018, there was a request for a waiver on a number of items for Tobin Farms. The first was to not require sidewalks in phase 2. So you guys who know the area, there's a creek that pretty much runs right through the back portion of the property. The front part is phase 1, back part is phase 2. Phase 1 has sidewalks on either one side or two sides. Phase 2 doesn't have any sidewalks. There's about less than 10 houses back there pretty much. They're all spaced pretty much apart. The street is nice and wide. I don't personally have any concerns with that. The second one was trees between the sidewalk and the street, I believe. All those properties back there have been there for quite some time. They're all beautifully, most of them are beautifully landscaped. Some of them are just very nicely landscaped. So I don't see any need for the trees at all. The other issue was 2 detention ponds, I believe, or 2 detention basins of some sort. Those were not constructed, but the stormwater was hooked up, everything hooked up into the stormwater system. So we're trying to get some kind of confirmation from Graves that this was actually the case, that everything was hooked up to stormwater, and I don't see any concerns there either. The one item that's going to be a little bit of a hiccup is with the guardrail. There are 2 areas that require guardrails. One Stebbins Drive and the other one is on Tobin Farm Road or Tobin Drive. Again, there's a creek that kind of runs through the back portion. There's a drop off from the street of a good 10 plus 15 feet. At Stubbins, the developer says that he will, I'm guessing 80% complete. It's a wood guardrail. The developer is going to take care of that, no problem. He says he doesn't have the funds to complete the guardrail on Tobin, but it's the same situation, that one is needed there. So I don't know how we're going to resolve this. This might be a question for the Board of Selectmen. If there's any, because there's not enough money in the escrow fund pretty much right now. So I don't know how we're going to address this, but I think that guardrail has to be, both guardrails have to be completed in order to get this on the town warrant 2 weeks from now? 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from our town meeting. I'm not sure how, Bill, what kind of follow-up you can do on this to see if we can, try to assist
Yeah,
Can I get it pushed through?
I think it really, George is going to have to do a lot of work quickly. Vinny, I think, needs to inspect the work once it's completed to make sure it complies. So we're sort of playing it as it goes here, and hopefully all the work can be completed to Vinny's satisfaction as highway superintendent, so that he can recommend to town meeting that it should be accepted as public ways.
Where'd you guys go?
You know, he's obviously concerned that he doesn't want to accept a road that's going to require the town to spend money to fix. So we want to be sure that all the major items are taken care of before it goes to a vote.
All right, so I don't think we need to take any action here right now, correct, Bill? I mean,
Correct. At some point, in order for the town meeting to act, the planning board would have to make a report stating that the subdivision is complete, and the highway superintendent obviously would have to help the board make that call. So there's no action required tonight, but before town meeting, the board will have to take a vote.
right, okay. Is there anything on the planner's plate?
The Economic Development Committee had a meeting last week, and John Gumpert, the proposed developer of the Stevens Mill, made a presentation to the EDC on the project that essentially you had heard previously. The EDC was mostly in favor of the project. They wanted to get some references from other clients of work that this company has done. If those come in with good references, then I think the EDC is going to also support the project at town meeting, which, as you know, requires a zoning amendment as was presented, and the board has already endorsed. So that's the only other major item that's been going on.
All right, any comments from the planning board?
Just one quick
question. I'm sorry, Bill, just clarification on that. Wouldn't the Cannabis Control Commission already have received references? Are we just kind of redundant here? Hasn't that already been done?
This is the Stevens Mill project, which is 164 housing units.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. I'm mixing that up. All right.
Okay.
I had two different mills. Sorry about that.
So I just had
That's my bedtime.
quick comment. I don't know if anybody else caught it, but on the May 11th Selectmen's meeting, Selectman Steve Sullivan, during a discussion, who was also a former planning board member, who during the discussion about Article 21, it's being sent to the town meeting, he mentioned asking the planning board to do away with what he called a bond reduction form, unless that we were legally obligated to do so. And I was just curious, Bill, have you received anything from the Board of Selectmen regarding that yet?
Does that have to do with the Section 81U of the subdivision control law, Steve?
I'm not sure. He didn't go into it further, but it sounded like he was explaining that the way it was now was that we would reduce the bond as the project progressed, and that what he's proposing, I guess, is that we don't reduce the bond until the project is completed.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to get some more information on that. I know that we do have the article to accept Section 81U of the subdivision control law, which would allow the Board of Selectmen to spend up to $100,000 of an applicant's escrow to complete a subdivision without having to go to town meeting.
That's when that discussion did come up, but I think I guess he's saying he doesn't want to see those bonds reduced during the construction.
Well, I mean, the planning board has jurisdiction over that. I mean, if he wanted to come in and talk to us about it, I think, we'd certainly hear what he has to say. But
Okay.
typical procedure to reduce bond amounts based on the cost of the work that remains. It's fair to the applicant so that we don't hold an excessive amount of funds that ties up applicant's funds.
Okay, that's all I had.
Bill, Lou, any comments?
No, sir.
All right. Only thing I want to say is thanks for hanging in there, guys. And Gallo.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
All right, motion. All those in favor will go by a quick roll call. Steve,
Aye.
Richard,
Aye.
Lou,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Dan. Aye. Unanimous. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.